Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Myth Vision Podcast. We are live. I've been going live every day for at least, I don't know, 2, 3 hours. So evenings, 5 p.m. to around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's my time zone. How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. Here we go. What's up, Baron? Good to see you. D-Bone Swish, digital content in the house. James Apperson, first one to drop in. Good to see you, James. I'm going to be covering my story, but I'm waiting for more of you to trickle in before we begin. I'm going to discuss this, and if you have questions, feel free to, ask away, super chat, skip the line, of course. If you have any comments, you want to put them out there, super chat, get my attention. I'll even set up a banner so as people pop in, they know that they can get my attention that way. I really think stories are the best way to convey messages. I get people who want to write history, right? Lucian talked about when you write history, you got to write it this way, But if you really want to captivate someone, if you really want to grab someone's attention and make them understand, you almost bypass the critical faculties and opinions people have. It's through myth, it's through stories, it's through various ways in which you can describe events. And so I've decided that I'm going to start doing live streams with people that get to tell their powerful stories. I put this out on the community tab. We've already released one of those stories. I've got others that I'm going to be releasing shortly on the channel. I think when people can hear other people's stories, listening to their deconversion as they unravel the myth in their minds that they had that was harmful. Okay. This is not to say that they have to agree with me on all views or something. No. Because at the end of the day, different people have different beliefs that aren't hurting people. It's really getting out of harmful, toxic stuff, right? And I am definitely one of those people who has been through, I believe, a very harmful, well, not only real churches that I think were high control groups, but the theology itself, when you understand it the way I did and you believe it the way that I did, harms you. It harms many people. And I want to go over that story to kind of tell you where I was at through the various churches I went through, what was going on in my mind at certain times, and to where I am today. And of course, my story isn't over, but at least it'll get you caught up to where I'm at today. And if you empathize, if you can understand like where I'm at, cool. I hope that's what we do when we tell stories, right? Is we try to connect and feel where those people are coming from, because it helps us in our own journey to know we're not alone. Number one, because sometimes we feel alone. But number two, you might be somewhere along the journey in your life and you go, oh, that's the steps he took. I'm going to avoid doing that. It didn't work out very well for Derek. So I'm going to avoid that. And there's some wisdom there. Trust me when I say I'm a bundle of mistakes. Okay. And I'm going to make more in the future. But sometimes they say there's like 3 types of people in the world. There's those who learn they learn their lessons by, hearing other people's mistakes. And then you've got those who learn their lesson by making mistakes and then they learn from them. And then there are those who never learn from their mistakes and they're dumbasses. Okay. I think I'm like 1 and 2, probably more 2. Okay. I learn hindsight. I learn a lot. And I think a lot of us are. So we got to get into the story soon. I'm going to check you out here in the chat real quick and then fill you in on what happened to me, man. Why am I not a Christian who does not believe in the Bible anymore? What happened to me? All right. We got Elijah in the house, Jade in the house. Good to see you here during a live stream. Kyle Axington. The Bible is satire. Debate me. Psst, this is satire too. James, good to see you. Mr. Step, Kian, Ricky in the house. Ricky is going to give his story soon too. Harmonic Atheist in the house. Good to see you, brother. Thank you for sharing your story, Derek. Stories are so very powerful, without a doubt. I think it's important that we do tell our experiences, see if people connect. Even if you don't agree with me at the conclusion, you might say, nah, I follow you up to this point, but I went down this path. Okay, cool. Zorkrov, I think the greatest harm that religion does is to critical thinking. Interesting. Donna, I love what you do. Keep it up. We are learning so much that is never taught. That's another thing. The church did not teach me 99% of the stuff, maybe 90. I don't want to over exaggerate. A lot of the stuff that I know today, they don't talk about. Kian, Vintage. I'm just trying to recognize everybody so you don't feel alone here. Jay Lee, good to see you. Man, Bear Pig in the house. Good to see you. Kim, good to see you. And Bubblegum, know the truth here. There you go, Mandy. All right, I'm going to start now. Again, if you have questions, super chat, feel free to interrupt. I'm happy to take a break. Trust me, these aren't easy, okay? I'm going to probably set up panels and start having more panel discussions because I'd like to start streaming more with you and spending more time online. The problem is I'm having to talk. And unless I'm watching a video and reacting to it with you, which I'll do that as well as we go along the way, maybe not tonight, but in future videos, talking for 2 or 3 hours is very not only difficult, but exhausting. That's a lot of talking, and it takes a lot of energy to do. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through this story. Okay, who's Derek Lambert? I'm interviewing myself, right? You guys know I always interview everybody about deconversion stories. Who's Derek Lambert? I would say, my mom and dad, right? I've told this story in other channels before, but this is me interviewing me to tell you. My mom and dad, my mom's from the South, from Florida. My dad's from New York, and he joined the Airborne Rangers and met my mom at some house party. And he tells the legend, I say, he saw my mom. He said, I had 2 girls. I'm at a party, and then I saw this beautiful blonde-headed girl just walk in front of me. My knees gave way, So he meets my mom. Somehow alcohol's in the mix, and Derek is born, okay? My mom was very religious, like deep down religious. Not that she was actively religious, like she made us go to church on Sundays and Wednesdays. But I remember growing up, and we would say prayers every night. My dad would be deployed quite often to somewhere in another country, most of the time South America, because he was in the 7th Group Special Forces. He was a Green Beret in the Special Forces. He was like an elite soldier. And we were afraid, and we'd go and sleep in mom's bed as little kids, and we'd pray at night. And sometimes mom would even scare us with like she believed she'd see a demon or something in the dark. And me and my brother would freak out and like start thinking we're seeing stuff. And so she was not only a Christian, but very superstitious. All right. I remember going to there was like a flea market when we were kids where this guy who was like palm reading, yet had a near-death experience and said he could read into people's lives and know their future and stuff like that. But he was a Christian. And he said something to my mom, and my mom started crying. Like it was almost like he knew something about her, she said, that like she didn't tell him. How did he know? And she's crying, and it's scaring me because my only security as a little boy at the time was my mom. My dad was off deployed somewhere. If something went down, there was no one there to protect us. I mean, it was my mom. That's it. And here is this other man who's like tricking my mom in a way, and it felt really strange. My instincts were not feeling what was being put down. It scared me because now my mom is vulnerable and believing everything this man is saying. And like accepting, because he said some things to her that I guess she believes, was like predicting her future, but also knew about her past. And long story short, I remember being freaked out. Okay. Like instability there. Like my mom could easily be duped. And my dad was Catholic. So the only time he went to church was like 3 times in my entire life growing up as up to teenage years. Only at weddings. So he would show up at a Catholic church, or we'd hit a mass, but like it was Christmas time in Cooperstown, New York, where he grew up. He grew up right near where Baseball Hall of Fame, right there in Cooperstown. And like he'd hit mass and we'd go in there and they'd do this thing and they'd get on their knees, and we're Protestants. Like my mom took us to church. We knew what church was like. This was different. There's all sorts of art and smells and bells and whistles, and the priest is in this weird outfit and they're all walking up and the priest has to put it in their mouth. Like we did not know what to do with all this. It was just completely different. Me and my brother Kurt. So mom would like want us to go to church on the Sundays sometimes. And I didn't want to go. It was boring. I didn't like it. I was what, 6, 7 years old. I mean, I'm throwing ages out here, but like my whole upbringing, I was not a fan of it. So we had this restaurant. A way to my heart is through my stomach. We had this restaurant, and for those who might live in the United States, it's called Golden Corral. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet, and I love eating, okay? I'm a food guy. And my mom would go, son, I'll take you to Golden Corral if you come to church with me today. So it's not like mom forced us in that regard, but you're not going to get me to turn down a free buffet if I can go and just fall asleep in her lap in the main room. And occasionally I'd go to the child's area. And I remember hearing about a guy on a boat with animals and a flood and all that. I didn't really know much. I'm just a kid. I'm playing soccer. Military household. We went to a church right down the street. We'd visit different churches every once in a while. Then dad would come home. And I want to give you more than just my religious, path, because it's important you understand me from not just the religious side, but also some of the drug addiction side, some of the trauma side. Dad would come home and he'd be in some war zone or some conflict type area where it was pretty traumatic, and he'd get drunk, and he struggled with alcoholism. My father's an alcoholic, and it was every night just about that he would be drinking, and not every night it was, out of hand, but it was so often that he would be belligerent drunk and it would get abusive and verbally rough is the best word I would say. Sometimes, very rarely did it get violent, but it would get so worked up, so bad that we either finally went to bed and things calmed down, and the next day he'd apologize because he did not mean to turn into the werewolf he would at night. Mind you, my father was my hero. Like, if you met him and you got to speak to him, he would charm you. Like, I got an interview coming out. It's not out yet, but I did one with a scholar, Adrian Goldsworthy. He wrote the book. He's a well-known historian of the Roman world, Augustus, but I did an interview on Julius Caesar recently with him, and he describes Julius Caesar through the sources. This guy had charm. My dad has charm. My dad has it, but he's not the only one who had it. My grandfather, my dad's dad, had it. And I remember him telling me at the funeral of my grandfather, my dad's dad, a random guy who met him in 1970 something walked up at the eulogy. The whole town is present because my grandfather was known in Cooperstown. They had a field named after him. My last name, Lambert, all of that, all there in New York. And the guy stood up. He says, I met Paul Lambert back in 1970 something at the getting mail at the mail place. And he said, I don't know what it was, but Paul Lambert had it. He said, I don't know what it is, but he had it. That charm. That's my dad. And so my dad, was my hero, but he also was alcoholic. I loved him, and it hurt so deep when he would be the way he was. But when he was good and when he wasn't drunk, it was the best thing in the world. And me and my brother had to live through that. We had to go through a lot of that for many, many years. My mom had to go through that. Like, she loved my father, and still to this day, they're together today. And he's sober today, which, is shocking because it's been a lifelong struggle. I jumped the gun, but to give you kind of background here. All right. So dad would come home. There'd be that kind of struggle. He'd be gone. There was another struggle of fear, protection, security, all those kinds of things. And I finally end up going to play baseball at the local community baseball, club or whatever. And I remember meeting this guy who introduced me to this house church. And he's like, "Hey man, come with me to church on Sunday and check it out." And I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." And we went to this house church, and they had music, and they had people making noises with their mouths that I had never heard before like that. The only time I ever heard it being done, speaking in tongues, was at a Pentecostal church when my Uncle Bubba had brain cancer, and they were trying to heal him in the Pentecostal church. It's like a snake handling church somewhere in the South. They're trying to heal him of brain cancer, and they're laying their hands on him, and it was freaking weird. I am standing there. I'm not used to this. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? And at this house church, they're speaking in tongues. They got tambourines, almost like my headphones here, kind of, where they had the little, you can hold the side, and you're like, "Yes, Lord," do praise and worship. They were non-denominational. They were King James onlyist. Okay. And this is a King James Bible from my high school that I still have from the times that I went to that church. And I believed the King James Bible was the only, true word of God. This church would teach that. So I get introduced to a very charismatic, non-denominational, but kind of Pentecostal, but not Pentecostal too. And they also would practice Jewish holidays. So it's like a weird mixture of things going on in this house church. And they would warn me, no other church teaches line upon line, precept upon precept. No other church teaches this. Our church is the only one that's really doing the right thing with the word of God. We have the proper teachings, and you really need to, stick around because we have the right teaching. I'm indoctrinated. I get baptized in her pool in the backyard. And then the day comes where I'm saved, but then she says, "That's not enough. You need the Holy Spirit. And you'll know you have it with the gift of tongues." So they're standing there. I remember it to this day. I'm probably 11 or 12. This is just before I moved to Puerto Rico. My dad was deployed into Puerto Rico for 3.5 years. And I remember her laying her hands on my head and the group around me, all putting their hands on my shoulders. They're trying to make me feel comfortable. And they're all going, and they're like going and going. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, and they're telling me it'll just happen. It'll just happen. You'll know. It'll be the Spirit that takes over. It'll just happen. And I'm sitting there for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I think max 10 minutes. I don't think I waited more than 10 minutes. And I just started to do it. But like, I was like trying to, like, it was like a reward system. It's like, anyone who does any studying on, like, they've done this with birds where they've done experiments where they have a reward feeding system. It's a feedback loop where if they've done the experiment with a beak. They have certain birds that have very, very bright beaks, and the baby birds go toward the beak to get the food from the mother. Well, they've made artificial ones that are even brighter than the real bird's beak that's supposed to be bright. And the baby goes for the brighter one to get reward. And so there's ways in which this reward system is being fed to you, meaning as long as they know I'm speaking in tongues, I'm saved, they're rewarding me with praises. "Oh, you have it. Yes, you're saved. You're a son of God. Yes, yes." Like they're getting me hype, and I'm starting to fall in line going, yeah. Right? You're speaking in tongues. You're just making noises. And they're making you convinced more and more that, yeah, this is good. This is you. This is not even you. This is God doing this to you. And you almost psych yourself into thinking it's really not you. It's God taking over. But really, I made a conscious decision at some point during that time to just start speaking in tongues. And I felt so good inside, and the experiences were so profound. So I'm going to this church that believes in modern miracles, modern prophecy. Like, we really were about the Spirit of God inside of us. And I'm at a public school with my Bible, the only kid in my entire public school who would have his Bible at lunch and be reading his Bible. these are like secular public schools. This is not like a private Christian academy, which I did finally go to in the 6th grade, but like this is a secular school. And I'd be reading my Bible and people would mock me and people would laugh at me, and it would just confirm you're going to be persecuted. The church told me I'm going to be persecuted. So when they laugh at you for reading the Bible, it makes you want to read the Bible even more. So you're self-confirming your own truth, right? You're making it true because you're the oddball who's reading a King James, thou art. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, he who is without sin cast the first stone. You know, these well-known poetic phrases that come from the King James Bible. I'm reading an ancient English text Bible at a school where kids are flirting and dating and, you know, sneaking a little alcohol at parties and stuff. And like, that's what normal kids were doing at the time. And I'm over here saying, I'm going to be abstinent. I'm not going to do these things. Now, I need a pause because my mom finally did put me through a private school because the public schools at the time, I was having problems. There was bullying at times. There were issues that were going on my mom had with the principals. And remember, I had that house church experience, but then she put me through this school called Cornerstone Christian Academy. You could look it up online in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I went to this school and I had been away from that house church for a while. I don't have a car. It's not like I can drive to it. And I'm going to a Christian school, learning Christian stuff, but also learning history, basic stuff that, you know, Christian schools will teach in America, along with Christianity. And I had been distant from, you know, doing the things I was doing at the house church. And I'll never forget this moment because the sermon, we went into the hall where everyone goes, where they teach, they give you like the sermons and whatnot. And I remember the pastor preaching. And he said, have you ever told a lie? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah. And he's like, well, if you've told a lie, then you've lied about that lie. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's interesting. And then he's like, no, if you've lied about that lie, now you've created this web of lies. And the visuals he used on the screen were rubber bands. I remember that for some weird reason. That's still a memory that I have, where he had rubber bands kind of interconnected somehow on the visuals. And then the message hit home for me. He said, you see, those lies are sins. They're things you've done wrong. Think of it like a bank. You know, you've built up these bad things. But listen, there's a God. There's a heavenly Father, which I already believed in, who loves you unconditionally. He will never, ever let you down. And he sent his son to die for you on the cross to take your sins from you. All those lies, all those bad things you've ever done, they could be easily forgiven. And he died for your sins. Just come down and accept him into your life, you know, or just accept him in your life. I don't know if he said come down. I think there was some kind of come on down here and accept him in your life. And I think I had this like dedicated moment that day because the message was you have a father and this father will never let you down. Right. And my human father did quite often. He was my hero. Well, this can be your hero too. This hero will never let you down. That shit hit hard. And I remember feeling like my feet weren't on the ground the rest of that entire day. Like I felt like I was like walking elevated. I had such a warm feeling in my stomach. I had such a deep, warm experience inside that I was at home and I'm walking like I'm floating. It felt like I was light as a feather. And I remember those experiences were profound. Deeply profound. So years go by and I'm taking the Bible super, super serious. Probably, I don't know many guys who get that deeply devoted and religious. And it always made me wonder, like, they're not taking this serious. Other people my age weren't really taking the Bible, Christianity, that serious. And it really made me frustrated. And it made me want to help make more people believe and to take Jesus serious and to get saved so that they wouldn't burn in hell for all eternity, because I believed all those things in my Christianity. I really, really wanted to not have people be hurt, help people. And so I am spending the next few years trying the best I can to do what I'm supposed to as a Christian: pray, study, go to church, all of these things. But then there's this other side of Derek. Derek is not one person. There's a side of Derek that's like, my brother, my friends, Jose, Mahano, and others, they're all going to a bonfire this weekend. You want to go? And I have it. If you think about my grandpa or my dad, I have it. If you meet me in person, you'd know what I'm talking about. Like, we're going to get along. I'll meet you where you're at. Like, it's just, I'm a people person. It's just who I am. And I'm sitting there, and I remember them saying, let's go to the bonfire and hang out. Let's have fun. And so I go to the bonfire, and almost every conversation, I usually brought up Jesus somehow. I somehow was that weirdo who's in the crowd, who makes everything turn into, how can I get you to think about Jesus? How can I get you to be saved? Literally almost every conversation. And a lot of my friends would be like, bro, I don't want to bring you around if you're going to always bring up Jesus. Like, once in a while, it's the right time, but not every conversation, D. And they liked me as a person, but they'd be like, you're obsessed about this. Like, chill. So I would try to do that. And I go to the bonfires, and they're all snuck a case of beer from their mom or dad's. And they hand me a beer, and I'm like, okay, crack open the beer. I'm like, music's going. We're hanging out. There's girls. There's my buddies. There's bonfire, alcohol. I'm getting spruced up. I'm feeling joy. I got happy. I feel that if I was 5 feet tall at the time, or 5'5", because I'm a teenager now, I felt like I was 10 feet when I drank alcohol. I felt like I was invincible. I felt like I was socially not shy of anything, and I could do anything. So I would drink, and then I would also then communicate and associate with girls. And, I'm doing the boy thing. And I realized why they did the boy thing. And I'd get away from Bible, and I'd go to the next bonfire, and I'd not do as much about my religious stuff. And I compartmentalized in the back of my mind. I'd feel guilty at first about these things. I'd have a guilt reminding myself from the indoctrination, this is bad. Don't go down that path of sex, bad. Don't go down that path of alcohol, bad. And I finally stopped letting that bother me and put it away on a shelf in my brain where cobwebs collected. It wasn't something I cared about. And I was just enjoying the party life and enjoying being a teenager and doing what teenagers do. But then you got to go back home, and you got to see dad in the state that dad's in. You got to go and see mom and have to experience what mom's going through. And then also, this starts to cause you problems with school, because now you're not just drinking alcohol. And I'm skipping some details here. Like in Puerto Rico, when I moved to Puerto Rico, I lost my virginity. I was away from doing church stuff. I'm drinking alcohol. I'm having fun with the kids. Some of the best memories of my life were there in terms of just the people and the environment, going and swimming in underwater caves where they had pockets where you could go up and put your head in the caves and breathe under the caves in the water. Like, there were some amazing things that happened in this time. But then I come back, I get my heart broken. The first girl who took my virginity broke my heart, cheated on me. And I said, no more girls till I get married. Jesus is my Lord, and I'll show her. And I did. I'm at high school now. I'm in high school reading my Bible again, being mocked and joked and clowned upon. And I'm not trying to go down that path. I'm doing good with Jesus again. And then another scene, party, normal stuff teenagers are doing in high school. And I got away from the Bible, and I started smoking weed with the friends. I'm hanging out at the bonfire. I'm smoking weed. I'm doing things. I'm hooking up with no strings attached at this point with girls at this time, like going through this phase in my life thinking, yeah, I don't want my heart broken, but this is fun. Let's do this. And around this time, I actually met my wife, what would be my future wife, the queen of my life, Ryan. And she, we met at a bonfire one time. This is the interesting thing. In middle school, she dated my brother for 2 weeks. Okay. It's so wild. This is like totally in inner circle conversation about my life. But For 2 weeks, she dated my brother in middle school, and I meet her as I'm a older teenager. We're at a bonfire, and I met her. We're drinking. I'm being the cool guy. I'm doing all the cool big stuff, picking up the logs, throwing them in the fire. Alcohol's in the mix, all of that. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but I'm really like loving escaping reality with alcohol, smoking. I'm smoking almost every day, if not every day, weed. And that's even during like school. So before school, we'd meet up with guys, we'd smoke some weed. I'd go to school and I'd be so stoned out of my mind the first 2 classes, I wasn't even able to pay attention. I was sleeping most of the time. I'm like so out of it, so high that I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing and getting through school and being educated, and I'm escaping reality, and it was fun. And I'm skipping class too to go see the girl that I'm in love with, and I'm skipping some stuff here, but it's important that we try to get back to the whole theme of the overall story. I'm skipping class to go see her, not that she made me, it's that I wanted to. And I'm messing up my life in terms of education, in terms of my health. I mean, I was really, really in great shape. Triathlons I ran. I'm in like every sport just about. I'm in the best physique of my life. I wanted to wrestle in high school. This is the first year I'm going in at 154, and I'm wrestling against one of my good friends who'd been wrestling since he was 3. And I was just so good that I was going to end up being the main guy in 154 weight class. But I'm smoking and doing all this stuff, and I messed up my grades that when it came time to actually do the wrestling and be part of the tournaments, I couldn't be on the team. My grades weren't good enough. So I go to the principal. They had advice, and they said, Derek, you've done so bad this year. I hope you get your life together. And you should probably drop out the remainder of this semester because it's too late. It was almost near the end of it anyway. And come back next semester to finish off and get your high school diploma. Because it was like the last half of my senior year that I was not doing good at all. So I do what I do best. I go back to Jesus. I'm in these classes. I even took honors in my second half. I'm so confident, and I'm reading my Bible. I have it on my like desk. I'm trying to keep it where you could see it, but like it's on my desk. They didn't mind if you had a Bible in there, but like, you know, I'm supposed to be doing my work, but I'm looking at the Bible, reading my Bible, and every chance I would be late to my class, like by accident, not that I meant to do it, and they'd send me to in-school suspension, I would be happy because then I could actually, because they didn't do anything in there, you just sat in that room, I could then undivided attention read my Bible. And I read the entire Bible in high school, Genesis to Revelation. I remember rereading it and crying, reading passages, crying. I thought I was there. It was like the movie, The Never Ending Story, I think it's called. Let me double check the name of it. It's the one with the kid and the dog. It's like the flying dog. The Never Ending Story, I think it is. Let me see. The Never Ending Story. Yeah, The Never Ending Story, where the kid reads the book, and it's he's reading the book, but he's there. He's in the story, and he's watching what's going on in this mythical land. I thought it was real, not mythical. I thought it was actual history, and it really happened, but I'm seeing it happen in my mind's eye while I'm reading the whole book. And I'm not going to lie. I get to Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. Of course, all the genealogies sucked. I still read them, but I'm like, he begat, so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. I didn't give a shit about the genealogies. I cared about narratives. I even cared about what the prophets were saying. But when I got to Matthew, the feel that I had reading up to that point did not feel the same. It didn't have the same oomph that the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament had. Personal, subjective opinion. I'm just being honest. That was my experience. As a Christian, the Old Testament was more fun than the New Testament was for me. Even though I believe Jesus was God in the flesh, Trinity, all of this stuff, the Old Testament was more fun. But okay, I'm on track. I get my degree. I'm in love. I meet the woman that I'm going to end up spending the rest of my life with, right? I get her pregnant. I am a senior in high school. I get her pregnant. Sometime around my graduation, I marry her. In North Carolina, her mom, by law, had to sign her over into my custody because she was under 18 years of age and I had just turned 18 years of age. She was just turning 17. I'm 18. I marry her. And I'm thinking, I'm going to do the Christian thing. I'm going to do the right thing. I got her pregnant when I wasn't doing the right thing, and I'm sleeping with her, and I'm doing stupid shit. This is really a raw, honest, transparent story here. I'm saying, oh, I don't want to sin because we're not married yet. So I'm going to sleep in the other room to keep my pregnant partner, right, is in the room next to me, and I'm struggling with watching pornography, right, as a man who has very intense hormones, struggling with pornography, and she's in the other room, and I'm telling myself, don't sleep with her because that's a sin, but then I would struggle in private with watching porno. And I'm going, and she's like, this is embarrassing. What is wrong? Like, this is ridiculous. I'm pregnant. I'm going to be with you. We're going to be together. And I'm confused. I'm struggling because I had that same struggle before I met her as a teenager who's now hormones, going through puberty, reading my Bible, knowing that that's wrong. And I would still struggle with that. Well, that struggle carried over into the marriage or into the relationship. And I'm trying not to commit a sin of adultery or fornication or whatever you want to call it before marriage. This is how insane my mind was. And she's living in my mom and dad's house at the time. By this time, right? She's pregnant. I was living in her mom and dad's when I was still kind of running around doing my thing, but I get super religious all of a sudden. And then it's like, oh, let me create these parameters that somehow are going to keep me from sinning, but then I'd still sin. And it's insanity, right? It's insanity. So we get married. And I've tried new things. I've tried ecstasy at this point, MDMA with various drugs, I'm sure at the time when ecstasy was a real big thing that were in those pills. I did mushrooms. I tried other mind-altering substances. And one time I had a headache. I had a severe migraine at her mom's. And I asked her mom for a Tylenol. And my mother-in-law, which, she is today, I called her my stepmom on one of my I think, or something. I can't remember. I was so out of it. I said the wrong word. But my mother-in-law gave me a Percocet, a 5 milligram Percocet to help me get rid of my headache. And I remember taking it, and the same warmth I felt in my stomach the day I got saved at that altar call back when I was in 6th grade, where I felt like I was on a cloud. I felt floating. I felt like God wrapped his arms around me with warmth and said, everything is going to be okay, Derek. Because everything is okay. I felt that from the Percocet. I felt like, wow, this is something that, I really, really enjoyed it. It helped me to feel better, got rid of the migraine easily, but then also made me feel something else was filled, a hole that was being filled temporarily with something that made me feel good. And I just remember that as a memory, as part of the endless amount of times that I would go and get hooked on painkillers and then try to get clean off painkillers and then try to go to alcohol and then end up abusing alcohol and then try to get off of alcohol. And I was also like my father. I turned into a werewolf. The very thing I did not want to do, I became. And I said, I'll never be like that to my kids and my wife. I'll never be like my dad was to me and my brother. And I remember I turned into that in many ways, not all of the ways, but in many ways, I did not control myself. I couldn't. I would black out. And people would describe, dude, you try to fight me. You're trying to fight everybody at the party. Sometimes I would literally do crazy stuff, like take all my clothes off and be just lunatic at a party, like just not making any sense. And when those really low moments happened, I would constantly return to, I know the answer. I already have the answer. I just need to go back to Christ. I just need to go back to the Lord. I need Jesus in order to keep my life right. In order to do the right thing, to walk the right path, I need Jesus. But mind you, along this path, all along this path, I had met other Christians, other people who said speaking in tongues ceased in the first century. That miracles, they really happened back there, but it stopped with the canon, with the scripture closing. Other scripture or other Christians who would argue that, you need to do works in order to be saved. And others who said, if you do works, you're not saved because you're taking away the work that Christ did. And so you had these once saved, always saved, and you can lose your salvation Christians. Then you had other Christians who were Catholics, and I did not even think they were even in the circle of Christianity in my mind. I believed they were complete, Satanists. I thought these people worship a woman. They worship Mary, right? All of these things. That's the fundamentalism, the radical fundamentalist worldview that I came from. They were pagans, idolaters, worshiping all these saints and this woman named Mary. I obviously adopted a form of Protestantism, but even within that, no one agreed. I mean, in the same circle of the same church, they agreed, but I wondered in my mind, why are so many of these Christians reading the same book and coming away with so many different explanations? It really baffled me because this was the word of God, and the scriptures themselves identify, the word of God, will last forever. The flower fades and the grass withers, but the word of our Lord will be forever, or whatever. And of course, I took the whole package deal as one story. So the whole book was one story. They did too. And there was a seed of doubt. It wasn't that God didn't exist. It wasn't that Jesus wasn't the Lord. It was just like, it was more like, do I have the correct Jesus? Do I understand the correct version of Christianity? And so I was willing to listen to other Christians within my Christian world that didn't agree on doctrines. And I started to watch debates. I don't know how early, but I think I'm a teenager. We're talking 13, 12. Ravi Zacharias, William Lane Craig, R.C. Sproul came a little later. When I became a Reformed guy, I didn't really care for him till I was Reformed. It was Lee Strobel. I mean, I remember as a teenager reading The Case for a Creator and thinking, oh, he's debunked evolution because there's been like these hoaxes of fossil record. Like they made up fossils and they've tricked everyone into believing evolution. This is a lie. Oh, God did create the earth. Oh, yep, this verifies the Bible. And then I got A Case for Christ, Lee Strobel. And I remember watching The Line of Fire, I believe, by Lee Strobel. And I'd watch these skeptics pop on. I hated them. They were my enemies. Honestly, screw these guys. I wanted nothing to do with these satanic, evil enemies of Christ people. Okay. I'm trying to give you some of my emotion and energy here. I think it's important because this was my mind. I remember seeing this guy named Richard Carrier. He pops up and he's talking to William Lane Craig, and he thinks he knows better than William Lane Craig, and they're debating on The Line of Fire. And then I remember seeing Robert Price popped on The Line of Fire once, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's debating with this guy. And then I'm watching a rabbi, Tovia Singer, popped on The Line of Fire, and he's debating, and he's arguing about the Trinity and how incoherent it is, and there's only one God based upon the Shema, and there is no three persons in one. And I'm like, huh? All these guys that I ended up bumping into later were there, and they were my enemy. I didn't even know them. I never got the chance to even read their stuff. Screw these people. That's what my mind was. I was glad William Lane Craig said what he said. And even if like he lost, let's say, he won in my mind. It's like the recent debate I just was hanging out reviewing with Neil against Jay Dyer, for example. Jay Dyer fans, no matter what, will say Jay won. Very few might ever be like, okay, no matter what, they might be like, he lost that one. They might do it if it's against another Christian, but if you're dealing with somebody who's not even believing in the same God, there's like a bias naturally for us to root for our team. We do it with football, right? You have a team. You go in with your team, you leave with your team. You don't watch the Vikings play the Patriots and then walk away as a Viking fan and go, the Patriots outperformed today. jumping ship today. I'm going to become a Patriot fan. It's tribalism. It's human nature. It's what it is. Okay. Just giving you analogies to make sense of this. I'm getting really, really serious about wanting to not only defend my faith because I'm in a public school reading this and people are questioning if my God even exists, but simultaneously, which version of Jesus is the right one? Because I want to be correct in my theology and I don't want to keep slipping back into sin. Because I believed that something along the way was wrong with my spirituality. Something was wrong with either my faith or what I believed about Jesus that was causing me to go back into addiction, that was causing me to end up abusing my body and putting testosterone in it to go to the gym and get super huge and then have a wandering eye during my relationship with my wife. So I'm sitting here pumping myself with testosterone and my eyes would wander toward other girls. And I would do the dumbest shit that any stupid young man would ever do, like roided out of my mind. And like, I don't know how to live my life functionally. My life is like this. And I think Jesus will fix that. Jesus will fix that. But I also have an intellectual side where I want to know. So I have a very dysfunctional life that I think is functional as long as I have Christ in it. And I also have this idea that I need to intellectually defend what I believe. I need this to be able to live my life right. And I want to live the correct version of it. I know that Jesus is the way. I know that it's the truth. I know this God exists because experience when I was in 6th grade, experiences at the church, the warmth that I had from that altar call, that I know, but I need to know the right version. Okay, we're building up here. Solera Knight, you interrupted, and I thank you so much for interrupting with the super chat. Thank you so much. It helps keep the lights on here, and for being a member of the channel. We really appreciate that. Believe a lie and be damned, 2 Thessalonians 2:10. Virgins birthing gods, dead rising, all illusions. Easy to spot myth against our natural world. I think so now. If I understand the super chat correctly, and let me make sure I have 2 Thessalonians 10 correct. Let me get my King James Bible and read it from that since you super chatted me. I think now looking back, it all looks so easily in hindsight why it looks so obviously man-made is the best way I would say. The natural world seems like this is so human all the way through and through, and there's no real God behind this. But I did not at the time. My experiences and all of my cognitive attachments to the text combined with those experiences made me believe in the fantastic. And I swear all these videos I've made these years, I tried to find the video that I did this. I was driving one time and I had my phone out. You should never be driving while you're recording a video, but my dumbass was. And I was sitting there with the phone out. And I remember driving and I said to the phone, I said, I believe in the word of God so much that if the word of God said that Jonah swallowed a well, I would believe it. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? If Jonah, the human, swallowed a well, I would believe it. And I remember making that video thinking to myself, how freaking stupid can you be? Honestly, how stupid was I? I had no clue how dumb that sounded. It just sounded cool to me to be like, that's how I trust this word so much. I don't give a shit what it says. I trust and I believe in it. And that was a presuppositionalist that I was, not the modern tag metaphysical stuff that you see these guys do. I'm talking like the word of God is true. And I started with that. I didn't question it. I didn't doubt it. And it was a Protestant form of presuppositionalism that I was involved in. And that was it. So back to 2 Thessalonians 2:10. So 2:10 says, therefore I endure all things for the elect's sake. Oh, that's Timothy. 2 Timothy. Am I going the right way? I am not. You know what's so funny? Actually reading the Bible in paper when you've been working on a computer for the last 8 years, trying to find passages because you're so used to doing it through a computer instead of in an actual paperback, the chronology of books I can't recall all of how the letters are actually lined up chronologically in the King James. So bear with me for 1 second as I find it, because I want it from my sacred King James Bible. All right, I got to move slow here. We're in Paul's letters, and I'm in Galatians, Ephesians now. We're getting into those pseudo-Paul Philippians, back to a real Paul supposedly letter. I say supposedly because I don't know. Colossians. It gets hidden back here. 1 Thessalonians and 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 10. And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. Believe a lie and be damned. 2 Thessalonians 2:10. Yeah, the truth. You got to believe in this, and this is the truth. And to me, the truth was a fact. It wasn't just some esoteric meaning, value in the story. It was like, this happened. I need to believe this happened. The gospel message literally occurred in history. And that's the truth. You see what I'm saying? So virgins birthing gods, no problem. Dead rising, all illusions, no problem at all. There's no illusion with that. Easy to spot myth against our natural world. Psh, you're just blind because you don't have the Spirit of God guiding you into all truth, Solera Knight. That was my mind. And you could add in there, Jonah swallowing a whale. Psh, no problem. Literally. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So I'm this absolutely radical. Oh, keep reading from that passage. Okay, thanks for the super chat. What is in that passage? Is there something more that I'm missing? Before we get back to my story, I got to keep reading. You dropped me some money here. Let me find it. Here it is. So you say, and for this cause, God shall send them strong delusion. Ah, I see why you did this. Okay, so let's read it over together. And should I pull this up? I should pull this up. It's not fair. Let's do this together. 2 Thess 2. There you go. Easy way to find it. You don't have to figure out how to spell Thessalonians on the grind here. Let me be with you as we all are sharing in this together. And then I'll get back to continuing my story, because you can see where it's heading. If anyone watching knows me. Verse 10. And all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing, they perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. It's kind of you kind of wonder, what do you mean by perishing? Because there is a doctrine, and this is something that Derek Bennett, I got out of his story when he told me his deconversion story. There are versions of Christians who believed that if they believed in Jesus, they would not physically die. I'm not making this up. I'm going to continue reading, but I want to make this clear. They really believed that if you believe in Jesus, you won't die. You kind of wonder if there's like a remnant of that, even in the like, some standing here will not perish until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. I don't know. That's going into the Gospels, but what if this is saying they wouldn't die, but because they don't believe in the truth, or they fell short or something, somehow that superstition, doesn't work for them. I don't know. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe a lie, or believe the lie. And so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth, but have delighted in wickedness. But we ought always to thank God for you, brothers and sisters, loved by the Lord, because God chose you as his first fruits to be saved through the sanctifying work of the Spirit and through the belief of the truth. He called you through our gospel, that you might share in the glory of the Lord Jesus Christ. So then, brothers and sisters, stand firm and hold fast to the teachings we passed on to you, whether by word of mouth or by letter. Anyway, he goes on and on. I think we hit the relevant points, but all of this echoes the sentiments that I had. Thank you, Solera, for that. I really appreciate it. D Bone Swish, thank you so much for the super chat here. Where does it say that miracles in tongues no longer happen? Good question. How do dispensationalists justify it? Or do they just take Darby at his word? I can only speak from my experience, not everyone else's. My understanding in the Protestant circles that I was in, mind you, if you know the history a little bit about it, and I knew a little bit about this as I came to this conclusion, when I entered into the Reformed version of Christianity, That meant the PCA church, the Protestant, conservative, Reformed. They're kind of, think of the Puritans, but not as radical. That kind of version of Calvinism I came through, Baptist Reformed and Presbyterian Reformed. The historical record shows people like Martin Luther, people like John Calvin, John Knox, many of the reformers were actually arguing against the Catholic Church and all of their miracles that they would claim that their saints did. They argued against a bunch of their hagiography. Hagiography is just their saint kind of legends about this saint rising from the dead or a miracle happening at the hands of this saint and all this. They questioned them because there were so many contradictions and problems with the internal miracle claims by the church at large. That internal critique eventually led to modern biblical criticism that we read today, that Myth Vision literally has books galore of. So you can thank the Protestants for the tradition of critical scholarship that we are learning today in modern, New Testament critical scholarship, Old Testament critical scholarship, all started to really get, pioneered by Protestants in this regard. And there was combat back, of course, Catholics with preterism in response to all this stuff. So your question initially, though, is the miracles in tongues. I'll address that to say this. We read that when that which is perfect has come. Where's that passage at? When that which is perfect has come, when that which is perfect is come. Okay. That is in 1 Corinthians 13:10. Okay. And it says, but when the completeness comes, what is in part disappears, right? This is a butchered interpretation. But 1 Corinthians 10, I want to get the whole context so we can get the passage before this. I believe this is the passage off the top of my head here. We would read 1 Corinthians 10, and it would say, verse 8, we should not commit sexual immorality as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 of them died. We should not test Christ as some of them did and were killed by snakes. Notice that it's like going into some past story. And do not grumble as some of them did and were killed by the destroying. Is this right? 1 Corinthians 10? Hold up. 13:10. Butchering this. 13:10. Okay. For we know in part. This was what it was. They interpret the Protestant church that I was part of interpreted this as if the canon, the scripture, was not complete yet. So remember, the word of God is like supreme in Protestant circles, whereas if you go to Catholicism or like Orthodox Christianity, they have it up there, but it's like, let the Pope or let the leaders of the church, the fathers, do the interpreting for you. Don't become your own Pope of the scriptures. You need to let the leaders and the fathers of the Christian church tell you what the meaning of these texts are. And the Protestants are like, no, we'll go back to the word. Okay. So in this passage, let me share my screen with you so you can actually see it for yourself. It says in verse 8, love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. In the church I first went to, we did prophesying, we spoke in tongues. Where there are tongues, they will cease. They will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away, which we interpreted knowledge as something different probably than what the actual text means. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, or prophecy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned as a child. When I became a man, I put away childhood behind me, right? Or put childish things behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully. We interpreted that as that which is perfect, complete, is the word of God, the scriptures. So it never says like it ended here. We interpreted it that way, as if, God still can do miracles and heal you and all, but we're not like charismatic. We're not running around acting like God can't do a modern miracle, but like we're not prophesying and speaking in tongues anymore. That was for the initial phase of the church. and we would find ways to compartmentalize and say the word of God, that which is perfect, has come, instead of realizing this is actually like talking about the near apocalypse, the very actual end and the renewal of heaven and earth that was supposed to be, happening back then. Of course, it was supposed to happen soon. We didn't do that. So D-Bone Swish, I hope that makes sense on how some Christians interpreted that. I'm sure they use other passages to try and bolster this claim, but we would take that passage and say, the word of God is perfect. It never fades away. We go to that passage I read or mentioned earlier. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God is forever. We believe that the word of our God was the Bible, 66 books, the canon. And so anachronistically, we think that which is perfect has come. Once I left the charismatic scene, we stopped speaking in tongues and stopped acting like prophecy was still ongoing. It wasn't, because prophecy was complete with the scripture. So you don't have people running around creating new cults and new spinoffs and jibber jabbering and claiming, thus saith the Lord, and all that kind of stuff. No. All of that we have right here. No one's going to make up new things. There's nothing to add to it. You see what I'm saying? I hope that makes sense. Solera Knight again. Josephus claimed that 1.1 million of non-believing Israelites did perish by not believing the truth about the imminent Roman invasion. I think that's worded completely mistaken, my friend. I'm just being blunt. I don't think Josephus is claiming non-believing Israelites did anything. I think he just says that Israelites were attacked. If anything, he saw it as a judgment from God, right? And that we had gone astray, he would argue probably, that the Emperor Vespasian was actually the prophesied Messiah, and many of the Jews misinterpreted it, thinking that it was actually going to be among their own cohorts, people from the genealogical line of David, like we see with Jesus, or these are false messiahs that he would say, no, that prophecy that we've been reading from Daniel was talking about the emperor. And that seems to be the best reading of Josephus in context, in my understanding, that it's not non-believing Israelites. These are Israelites who believe in the God of Israel, that he thinks are being judged by that very God. Not now, the Christian spinoff that you might find in the Gospels is that the whole reason Jerusalem is destroyed, and I think it's written after the fact, though it's still anticipating a nearness of apocalyptic expectation, is that the reason the destruction of Jerusalem happened is because Israel, or the Jews, forsook Christ. They denied the Lord, and that this is judgment upon them. So it just depends on the text, but I wouldn't go to Josephus to make that claim. Josephus does not vindicate the New Testament text that way. He just corroborates that a historical event happened, and the theological spin that the Gospels make versus what the Josephus accounts for, I think are completely different in my view. And then you said they were told to flee by Yahshua. Yeah, in the Gospels, not by Josephus. So Josephus has nothing to do with what the Gospels are saying about that. And I think that is written after the fact. All right. I'm going to go back to my story here for a second. So feel free to super chat, and I promise you I will get there. And I'll get to your super chat. I just figure I proceed a little further in the story. Good to see you, Doc. But notice the irony. He doesn't say they perished for rejecting Jesus. Yeah, of course. Josephus doesn't. The Gospels will likely say, yeah, but Josephus doesn't. And if anything, it might be that they rejected the acceptance of Vespasian and the rule of Rome. I don't know. Some even try to, jump into Romans 13 and think Paul's in cahoots with Rome, right? Because he's saying, hey, God put these governments in place and all that. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not like a perfect, have it all figured out. But I can tell you this, I wanted to figure it out. And so I'm on a journey. And I want to say this before I get to where I am today. It's thanks to apologetics. I am speaking to every Christian who does apologetics in the world. Now, I understand you're on your grind. You're doing your due. Got it, bro. Got it. And I say bro because 99.9% of Christians who are doing this are bros. Let's keep it real. All right. You don't really see many girls doing what most the guys are doing on this. Okay. If it wasn't for apologetics, I don't know if I would have ever deconverted. I want that to hit home Because what apologists are trying to do is trying to make you go, this is a fact. It's verifiable. You can actually know this happened. Once you have an agenda of knowing something is true and that it's a fact that it happened, well, you're opening yourself up to go beyond faith. And we need to read Hebrews 11 because I think the apologists totally botch this interpretation every single time. Every single time. Hebrews 11. I think I got Hebrews 11 up here. Let's just do this. Oh, messed up. Hebrews 11. Now, faith is the confidence in what we hope for and the assurance about what we do not see, right? Paul says, I walk by faith, not by sight. Well, ladies and gentlemen, apologetics ultimately argues the sight, the evidence is there. It's provable. Like we have the case is so strong. The evidence is just right in front of your eyes. Just somehow go down to the local store and bump up your IQ, 20 more IQ points. You'll see the truth because it's intelligible, it's factual, it's evidential based. It is literally empirical. It's sight. It's something you can know, right? It's faith to me. Now looking back is much more in confidence of things you don't see, you don't know, but you believe anyways. And if you read through this entire chapter, Hebrews 11, every example he brings up are people in their case, maybe not every single, like Enoch was taken from this life, but he still walked with God, whatnot. But in examples like Noah had no evidence that a flood was coming. There was no water, it says in the Bible. No rain had ever fallen from the sky. No water had come up from the earth. There's no evidence. Yet, while warned by God about these things in holy fear, he still believed it, built a freaking ark, which we know this is a myth. But either way, I believe this as a Christian. By his faith, he condemned the world, not by sight, but by faith, okay? And he ended up becoming the heir of righteousness that is keeping with faith. He had no evidence to support the idea that God's actually going to destroy the world by water. And he believed it anyway. So once you realize faith is literally trusting God without any evidence, then you go to Abraham. He's too old, way too freaking old to have kids. His wife is too old, way too old to have children. God promised you're going to have the seed, the number of the stars. I can't have babies. She laughs and they name their child Isaac, which means laughter. Because she doesn't even trust it at the time. But Abraham has faith. And then, of course, they paint it in a way. Sarah has faith. Faith, even Sarah, right? And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he as a good as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. The evidence was not there. No evidence. No reason to believe the evidence. But faith. Faith is something different. I started to want to have the facts because apologists started telling me we have evidence that proves our religion. You understand where this is a problem? I'm warning apologists. Keep doing what you're doing, bro. Keep doing what you're doing. You're going to make other Derek Lamberts. You're going to make other people start actually going, you're making an interesting point. It sounds like you're making an argument that can be tested. You're talking about guys rising from the dead. Are there any other guys who rise from the dead? Are there any other people who walk on water or ascend into the clouds? Are there any reasons to doubt? Oh, are there contradictions between the accounts about this guy who's God in the flesh? Holy smokes, what's happening here? Right? You can see where this starts to go instead of just trust God. That kind of Christianity worked for me because it was emotional, it was experiential, it was deeply intuitive. It wasn't, you need to, go with the data, the facts prove it. And mind you, I had other baggage. I was a young earth creationist. I wasn't a flat earther, but I was a young earth creationist. I was anti-evolution. I was all of those things, right? So when you start realizing that was a lie too, the bridge just collapsed. Like, you can't, what is there to salvage anymore? And then when I talk to other more liberal Christians, more critical academics who are just so happen to be Christian, I don't understand why they're Christians with all that they know. I mean, I empathize. I respect their decision. I don't get it, though, with everything that they know in my mind. And it's probably because they didn't deal with this same problem of trying to have to be certain about this happened. They just are comfortable with having faith and believing that Jesus rose from the dead. That's a very different experience from apologetics. And I think the apologetics are doing work for people like me who are trying to help people, find freedom from toxic forms of the religion in which they were raised, in which they grew up in. So I'm a Bible thumper. I'm, my wife's mom mocked me and called me a Bible thumper, right? All these things, it would just make me more deeply driven into my faith when I would get persecuted, and then years would go by and I'd struggle with addiction again, alcoholism, whatever. And I think on and off for a whole decade, I struggled on and off with addiction. While then on and off would go and really get devout in church and then try to hit the gym and get back in shape and be in physical shape. So I do all these things to try to escape reality, but also cope with the existence I have. Because I think I have a lot of trauma from my upbringing, and just, there's a lot there, you know what I mean, that I think I'll always live with. So back to my story about this. I'm not stuck in this house church anymore. I go to this Calvary Chapel church, and I hear this pastor preaching in the Gospel of John, and he's talking about the Jews say to Jesus, when Jesus says, tear down this temple and I will build it in 3 days, rebuild it in 3 days. The Jews say, it took us, and this is what the pastor said, it took us 40 years to build this temple. And I remember him saying that. I'm like, nope, you're wrong. You misquoted the Bible. Now remember, the Bible's sacred to me. Like, it's on the pedestal that I can't put anything else on. It's God speaking in a way through these men, right? I can't remember if it's John 8. I can't even remember John somewhere John 8, tear down these temple, build it, rebuild it with he says it took us 40 years, right? Well, the Bible says it's 46 years. I remember the Jews said it took us 46 years to build this temple, not 40. And the reason why I knew that too is that I was already looking into things like gematria, or is there symbolism in the text and stuff. And if you break down Adam, and I don't know if this works in the Greek, I just remember it worked in the Hebrew. The name Adam in gematria, which is the alphanumeric system of the language, we would look for like secret codes, so to speak, in the text. The name Adam is the number 46. So it calculates, if you add up each letter of Adam in Hebrew, to 46. And I thought to myself, I'd been looking at this text and I thought, maybe Jesus is hinting at something deeper. And he's saying, if you tear down this temple, I will rebuild it in 3 days. And they're saying, hey, it took us 46 years to build this temple. And I thought, Adam is the first temple, so to speak. And the last Adam, the latest, greatest, the one who's going to solve it all and not fall for the eating of the fruit, is Christ. I'm reading symbolism into this, but it helped me to remember that passage and what it said. And the pastor was mistaken. So I approached him after the teaching, said, hey, I kind of wonder if I'm called to teach. I think I might be called to be a pastor, to teach congregations the word of God. Do you have any recommendations for me to get educated more and to take this further to potentially become a pastor, so I can help others, find the joy and freedom and amazing stuff that we have within Christianity? And he said, yeah, there's a local college that I went to. I would recommend you go check out Carolina Bible College. And they later changed the name to sound more sophisticated, Carolina College of Biblical Studies. This was an evangelical Baptist college. And it wasn't even seminary level. There were seminarians that went there and taught, but it wasn't really like seminary level, right? It was just a basic fundamentalist college. And I went. 2 years in, I get my associate's degree. I relapse. I had my wisdom teeth pulled. They gave me narcotics, painkillers. I'm back off to the races. I'm struggling. I'm working at T-Mobile. I've got all sorts of there's so much in my life that's happening here, and I'm struggling between faith and despair. And I don't know what to do. I don't know. Jesus becomes my opiate when I'm doing good and I'm clean. And then opiates become my opiate, but it's dysfunctional and it's self-destructive in a way that even Christianity wasn't. But still, Christianity did cause me harmful ideas about myself. Am I really yours, Lord? Am I really your child? I mean, this was an existential issue inside. I truly wondered, like, I've had so many struggles with addiction. Is your spirit in me? Because you say in your scriptures, if a son asks for bread, you won't give him a stone. And if I pray and ask for these things and the strength to go through with it, why do I keep falling in these weaknesses? How come I keep not being able to maintain and not be addicted to drugs and not struggle with these things? I mean, there was so much there. Solera, thank you so much for the super chat. I'll get to you in a moment. I don't want to lose track of where I'm at in the story. And I'm thinking, am I saved? And then confidence would come back and I'd be back in the Lord and I'd be doing absolutely the truth. And someone will just read one of the parables of Jesus and say, well, Derek, you're just one of those seeds who fell in between the cracks and sprouted up, but not in good soil. And, you sprout up and then you died out. Oh, you sprout up and you died out, but you never were rooted in the real soil. And it's like, well, that fucking sucks, dude. It really sucks. Because if this is real, let's just pretend for a second that this was real. I really wanted it. I begged, I pleaded, I desperately cried. I wanted this. I wanted the truth. I wanted him to help me to make it. And it's like, would your child crying and begging you for help, would you leave that person and go, oh, nope, your beg wasn't good enough or something? I mean, what kind of shitty God would that be? To sit there and watch someone who's desperately wanting this and trying to get the truth and wanting it and doing everything he can, spending the only little bit of money he has, finally gets a job at a Christian bookstore, uses his entire paycheck to try and buy movies and books, to try and learn more, to cherish your word and to try and get closer to you, to understand you more. All of that. Not only was I delusional, right? But if the God was real, that's complete horse crap, man. I mean, like, I don't know what else to say. The Christians who would dismiss this so quickly and so lightly and just go, ha, 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 you weren't one of us. You went out from us. It's so condescending. It's so mocking. It's so belittling. It's so, you have no fucking clue how deep I went, how long I went, how hard I went. I probably outdid 99% of you all in terms of my devotion and how hard I tried to seek and figure this out. And you just hand wave it. And I hate getting emotional like this, but it's necessary because you have no clue how much I really wanted God to just step in and really make the way. And I believed the words so literally. I really, really did. And so many Christians have throughout the years on Myth Vision just dropped these little, it's almost like they need to hear themselves say those scriptures to feel good about us who've deconverted. It makes them feel safe and protected. And I remember this because I would use this idea when I heard non-believers who didn't believe in Christianity. And it's like, how could I convince myself if I spoke to myself 15 years ago? I couldn't. And I wouldn't be able to convince myself unless I knew that it was me later, really me, coming back and talking to me through a time machine and said, Derek, I've got some news. And this is going to really shock you. Sit down and please, I'm you in 15 years. I really want you to please hear me out. Don't talk, just listen. I have to tell you some things that you shouldn't do along the way. Don't go to that place. Don't do that thing. But also, let me help guide you. Let me help give you some wisdom. Don't, disregard what I'm going to say. And if it was at least me, maybe I would listen to me, but I know I wouldn't have listened to other people. And I'm deep in this hole of like trying to get the truth. And there are other Christians I'm debating and I'm arguing online. That now we're in chat rooms. MySpace is out. Facebook has started. I'm in chat rooms online debating atheists, debating other Christians. I'm a Calvinist now, so now I'm talking about predestination. I'm arguing with other Christians about free will. I'm reading passages, of course, the well-known ones, Ephesians 1 and Romans 9. I know my Bible quite well inside and out. And of course, I know how to systematically overrule some of those free will sounding passages in favor of my predestinarian view. Oh, when God says, "Where are you, Adam? I don't know where you are," or that he repented, that he even made man and that he flooded the earth, or God repents like 3 times in the Old Testament, explicitly repents. God does. Oh, that's anthropomorphic language. That's not literal. Duh. Well, of course I have to say that. But when you go and look at any and every ancient Near Eastern context, they're not anthropomorphized outside space and time deities. They're very active, very much cultic ritual practice deities on the ground by real people, and they believe they had real bodies. This is a real thing. I had no clue. I would do all that, right? I had no clue what I know today. So then what happened? More struggle, more life. I'm about to die from addiction. I went from painkillers to stronger painkillers to what are called opanas, oxymorphone painkillers. I'm sniffing painkillers and I'm numbing my life to escape reality, to feel that warm comfort in my stomach that I had from the conversion I had as a child to the warmth I had when my mother and father would hold me as a child. I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to feel love, and Christ and the message of Jesus and all of that gave me that. So did opiates. It gave me that sense of love and comfort. So I'm desperate. I cannot stay clean. I cannot stay sober, and I'm injecting heroin into my veins. I'm so down the rabbit trail. You may not look at me and think, you were a heroin addict? Yes, I was heroin addict. I was hooked on drugs. I was injecting heroin into my veins for at least a whole year. A few times I almost overdosed in terms of hospitalization, but I know I blanked out a few times, right? And the crazy shit you do to try and keep your habit going is just insane. And how that compartmentalized from my religious worldview and the guilt and shame. And I remember one day I was so desperate one morning looking to try and get a fix that I went to my dope dealer house and I begged him to wake up early, like they didn't want to wake up on time. And finally I said, "Man, I don't have the money. Please front me a 20 bag." And he fronted me a 20 bag. And I remember he gave it to me, and I'm in the back seat with my younger brother, Kurt. And I'm looking at him and I'm fucking so sick of this. I'm so broken. I'm so tired. I'm so fucked up. Please, one moment. I turned and looked at my brother. I said, "How the fuck did we get here, bro?" And I remember I spilled some of it on my jeans. And I already took a piece of my Suboxone. And so I wouldn't even have felt it if I took it anyways. And I'm crying, and I look down at the spoon, and I could see my own reflection in the spoon. And I didn't want to live this way any longer. And I knew that this has to stop soon. It has to end. I'm desperate. And Jesus, I kept coming back, and it wasn't working, and I didn't know what the answer was, and I'm gonna die. And that's a whole nother story about how I got out of addiction, but I remember being completely broken. And as I ended up getting clean, I just want to skip ahead here a little. I had a few foxhole prayers at the beginning of it where I'd say, help me, whatever you are out there. Because I started doubting if Jesus was real. It wasn't working. It wasn't saving me. I know a lot of people have testimonies about being saved, and it was Jesus that did it and stuff like that. But mine was the reverse. My testimony is that as I exited Christianity and the shame and the guilt that comes with the ideology behind it, that your body is a sin. Your flesh is a sin. You as a human can't be human. You have to achieve above human status. You have to act like you're not this thing. You have to be martyr-like, so to speak, because that was actually the image I read in the text. If I'm going to follow you, I have to take up my cross and follow you, right? Oh, that shit hits deep just remembering it. It's so yesterday for me. And that's why I hope I never end up going back to something like that. It's been over 10 years. I've been off of drugs and alcohol over 10 years. October the 25th of this year will be 11 years. And when I got off of drugs and alcohol, I was able to start actually deconverting. And it kept me slowly, gradually, kept me even more feeling better about not having to go and fill a hole that I didn't have filled, that I needed God to fill, that I needed this. I was able to love myself. I actually learned it's okay to have imperfections. It's okay. There's not a problem with these things as I deconverted. But, whew, that was heavy. Sorry, y'all. I mean, it's super sensitive to me because this is my life. And I do wear my heart on my sleeve, and I try to be as transparent and honest as possible. But it's not easy to navigate those memories. You know, there's a lot more, and I've told these stories many times, and this is usually the deepest, darkest spot because I didn't want to live anymore, but I was too afraid to die. I didn't want to live. I wanted it to be over. I just didn't want to hurt, you know, and I was scared that if I ended it, I would hurt. And I didn't know what to do, you know? And when you're in that dark despair, when you really don't know what it, like, is it worth it? You know, when you don't know if you can even function to not kill yourself, you don't know how to not do it. You don't know how to function. You don't know how to just stop injecting yourself with drugs. You don't know how to not do the thing that you keep doing and you're stuck in. It becomes insanity. It literally makes you start to think something is really wrong with me, and I'm a bad person, and I'm irredeemable. There's no way out. It's what my mind would like to tell me. I'm here to tell you there is. And, you know, some people go down faith paths. Some people find this, find that. For me, it was finding myself. I know that sounds crazy, but it was like, I'd play the tape back to the times that Jesus would be there in my mind, and I'd realize, you know, the footprints in the sand, and they would show like one pair of shoes walking through the sand. And they said, you know, when you saw that, it was me that carried you. And I realized that, dude, no, those were your feet walking through it, and it was the loved ones around you, the friends around you, the real people. It was like if you go to the hospital, and I see this happen all the time. Even when I recently went because of my anxiety and stuff that I had, I go through the scanner. They scan my brain. They do the x-ray, all that kind of stuff, check my lungs. As soon as I was done with that, I just made a comment to the lady because I was nervous and scared about what's going on with me. I didn't know what was wrong. And I said, man, I hope the science keeps developing here. I said, And I hope that we could solve some of these problems we humans have. And she said, sweetheart, I did not further this conversation beyond this, but she said, sweetheart, it's God that gave us these science and these advancements. Just thank God, baby, that, you have the scanner for your brain and your heart and your lungs and all that. And I thought to myself, my goodness, even next to the most advanced scientific material, you have people who are operating that material that they're really on a faith-driven path. And I don't think faith is going to solve the issues that we need in terms of science and everything like that. So sorry, I'm really emotional right now from the story, but I think it's really important people understand that when you're in a dark place like that, you're willing to think you might be wrong about some things. Most of the Christians I knew in my life were Baptist, let's say, especially around North Carolina, Baptist, or if they were Pentecostal. They're still that today. Why? Why would anyone be, the same thing their whole life? I thought. Did they just blindly inherit what their parents gave them and never question it? Maybe they've had doubts occasionally on a Sunday morning. Maybe they have doubts to this day, but they've been complacent. They've been comfortable. Nothing's caused them to feel like they needed to question what they inherited from their parents. It's tradition. It's my family. It's what I've gotten from them. They passed it along to them. And it never made sense to me. That never made sense to me. I wanted to know the truth. That meant questioning my own dogmas. So when I was in my foxhole dying and did not know if I was going to live much longer and really was desperate, I was willing to question the dogmas that I had inherited and even the experiences I had. What is that experience? And I still believed it was a God, but I didn't necessarily attribute it to Jesus. At first, I did have a foxhole prayer and said, if there's something out there, but I started to read beyond Christianity. I started to look at other myths, other stories, other gods, other legends. And I'll tell you, once I did, it really expanded my mind to thinking of God in a bigger way, a much bigger way. Oh, whew. Hold on one second. I've got Solera. I'm going to come back to you again, too. And One Love Above. Look, I see you super chatted me. Please bear with me. I see the One Love Above 22. Thank you so much. Sorry, I am literally in tears right now. I didn't mean to get to that place, but it's all a part of the journey of my life. And this is literally what led me to where I am today. I also, I hope you don't mind, but I really, really, really need to use the restroom really quick. Bear with me 1 second. I'll be right back. I need to use the restroom. Whew. Forgive me. Oh, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I was full of water and I needed to go to the restroom. Okay. All right. So I start to explore beyond my little church bubble and my scriptures and was open to hearing different things that made sense to me because just so you understand, I was going to these groups called 12-step groups, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and various other kinds of groups like that. They help addicts and drunks who struggle. At least I've had experience that they've helped me in many ways. They're not like perfect, obviously, but it was better than living on the streets and doing what I was doing. And it helped me to get clean at times. It wasn't a permanent solution, but there were certain things they taught there that helped me to, get through not having to use drugs. And the people around for me helped me, right? They've gone through worse things than I have. Their experiences were more traumatic. They had a lot more intense war stories. And those war stories were like, kind of like, don't keep doing this. This shit can get worse for you kind of stuff. And in those rooms, it was a diverse room. There weren't just Christians. There were Buddhists. There were atheists. There were people who had their own constructions of God, and they would speak and they'd say, my higher power. And then they would start communicating. And I'm like, and they're staying clean and it's working for their lives and it's bettering their lives, whatever this is, their higher power, they call it. And some of them would not even have a real God. They would call God group of drunks. And they'd say, you people are my God. They'd come in the room and they would say, listen, I can't wrap my head around a higher being due to my science background. I recall some of these people making comments like this. And they'd say, but I have no problem calling God you, my group of drunks. And that was in the Alcoholics Anonymous. They'd call themselves drunks. So they would have these different ways. And I'd sit there and be listening to things that you're not going to get in church. You're not going to hear this at the Baptist church and it made me go, is the God the thing that's really doing it? Because they all have different gods. And how come all these people are having successful lives getting clean off drugs, but they all have different gods? So I would rationalize in my mind, well, maybe, what if this is just like a human thing and we're kind of like making up our own higher power? And in fact, many of them say, come up with a higher power of your own that makes sense to you. And then I'd see people with 15 years clean, their lives were better. They'd show up and they'd have these great testimonies. And I'm going, man, he just made up that higher power, like literally constructed his own higher power from his own, what he likes and what he thinks is the best, thing for him to stay clean and sober. And that led me to actually consider looking at other stories. Like the 6 Wise Men of Hindustan, that one's one of my favorite poems. I think it's worth playing that one. And worth showing. Bear with. Let's pull that up because that one is one of my favorites. The 6 Wise Men of Hindustan. Now, this is not I do not believe that this is a Christian story, if I'm not mistaken. I believe this is a like an Eastern kind of thing. And I'm sharing the screen now. I pulled it up. I'm going to have to zoom in. 6 Wise Men, the Blind Men and the Elephant. Okay. I always forget the name of it, but it was 6 men in Hindustan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind. None of them can see. That each by observation might satisfy the mind. The first approached the elephant and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side at once began to bawl. God bless me, but the elephant is very like a wall. The second filling of the tusk cried, ho, what have we here so very round and smooth and sharp to me, 'tis mighty clear. This elephant or this wonder of an elephant is very like a spear. The third approached the animal and happening to take the squirming trunk within his hands, thus boldly up and spake, I see, quote he, the elephant is very like a snake. The fourth reached out an eager hand and felt about the knee. What most this wondrous beast is like is mighty plain, quote he. T is clear enough. The elephant is very like a tree. I think it's clear. The elephant is very like a tree. The fifth, who chanced to touch the ears, said, I'm the blindest man, can tell what this resembles most. Deny the fact who can. This marvel of an elephant is very like a fan. The sixth no sooner had begun about the beast to grope, than seizing on a swinging tail that fell within his scope. I see, quote he, the elephant is very like a rope. And so these men of Hindustan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right and all were in the wrong. So oft in theologic wars, the disputants, I ween, rail on in utter ignorance of what each other mean, and prate about an elephant not one of them has seen. And I thought to myself, have I seen? Have I actually seen? I've had experiences. I've tried to see Jesus on the throne and but have I really seen? Do I really know? And if I was honest with myself, no. I've had profound experiences I attributed to God, and I still had that, but I thought God must be bigger than just Jesus, just Christianity. And the reason I did that is I noticed patterns that all of these religions had, and started to notice scholars who highlighted that many of the stories in the Bible were already working off of a pre-existent mythos that a culture already believed as their truths, that told their origin stories, that gave their system of beliefs. And once I noticed that the Bible was already doing that with prior material, I didn't believe that at first. I thought the Bible's the oldest, and I started taking serious real scholarship, right? That actually argues, no, dude, the Bible does not. It is borrowing from older material. That's just a fact. Once I realized that, I started going, my goodness, okay, maybe all these religions in the world are actually tapping into the truth in my mind. Maybe they're all trying to touch the elephant, describing the elephant, and that's why you have commonality, but they have differences too, and those differences, make them different. And in my mind, God got bigger and bigger. But around that time, this is during Myth Vision's origins, 8 years ago, I think I started this channel. Maybe 9, but I think it's 8. I'm a construction worker at the time. I worked full time. I'm always away from home at the time for my family. I'm trying to get clean and stay clean off drugs. I'm probably a year and a half. I had nothing but time on my hands with ear pods to listen to podcasts and listen and learn about ancient stories and understand where the Bible comes from and different ideas about certain text from it. But I didn't get into science like that yet. I didn't really know much about what experts in science say, whether it be biology, whether it be genetics, whether it be anthropology, whether it be, evolution, right? Specifically. And a lot of these scientists that I didn't like were also people who debated against apologists that I did like when I was a Christian. But I had gone through realizing those guys they're grinding to prove and try to get you convinced of their religion. And I was no longer buying apologetics anymore. But I was not an atheist. I was not someone who is an agnostic on knowledge and an atheist in terms of, is there a God? And I remember the science, as I started learning more about the natural world and my experiences through a natural lens, and that humans have experiences under every religion, under every cult on the planet, even outside of religion. The right song plays just right, you're going to have an experience. For me, that was something that made me realize, it's not the God, it's not even the group, it's not the belief. It has nothing to do with the name of a deity, the text that you're reading. It is a human phenomena, period. And we are doing the extra labor of saying it's the God, it's the deity, it's this, it's the being, it's the essence, it's the energy, it's the whatever. We are the ones adding that interpretation on. When I started to think, is this just the human experience? Is this me all along? And so I'd have these thought experiments as I'm doing Myth Vision at the beginning, and I still believed in a God as I started Myth Vision. At the beginning of this channel, I was a believer in a deity. And then it was like the way I described it to my family when they asked me, why don't you believe in a God anymore? And I'm like, well, I think that gods are human projections to explain the world, what we don't understand. And if you go far enough back, that adds up quite well to explain, nature. You see all these gods that they explain the phenomena and all this. And once I started realizing a historical research, couple that with science that I'm now learning, and I explained it to my mom and them as I'm going up and down these hills of knowledge and experience and trying to understand all these things. And it's like I got to this mountain where there was this big ass mirror on the top. And I walked up and I got real close. And if I come too close, I'll get out of focus. But I got real close and I saw myself. And it was like, dude, it's you all along. Like it's you that's doing this. It's your brain that is factoring in these ideas and perceptions. I may never know where all this comes from. And I'm still in awe of the question of why is there anything rather than nothing and all of these things. But it's you that is projecting these things. And it's cultural adaptations and humans that are doing that. And then they're fighting over who has the right projection. And I'm like, oh my God. It was almost like I had become a non-believer and didn't even realize it. And then one day I was like, I need to make a confession. And I made a video. If I could find that video, you got to see the thumbnail. Like, I actually tried to describe this in a really short way on my channel, but it's like confession. I'm an atheist is what I said. And it's unfortunate that the term atheist gets such negative. It's such a negative because it's I'm not atheist, right? But like, I don't believe there are gods. I hate to say it. I mean, it's just is what it is. I don't believe there are gods. That doesn't mean I know there aren't. I'm just pretty convinced that there aren't, right? Confession, Myth Vision. I don't know if I titled it that, but that name comes to mind. Yes, it is. Here it is. Let's watch me from the past. It'll give me a little second to breathe too. But if you haven't seen this, and many of you might be new to the channel, oh, here it is. Let me actually get the video up. And I make a confession because I'm like, after I way, I'm going to, become like I need to let you know, like I didn't even realize it, but it happened. And this video is 4 years ago. So that tells you roughly about when I came out publicly saying what I think. 2021. And my public confession, I'm an atheist. Let's watch a little bit of that if that's cool. I have a confession. I'm an atheist. Feels good just saying that, but I never thought I would ever say that. I'm not one of those atheists who wishes that, I wish things could have been the same way they were. I wish I had the faith in God like I used to. I'm actually very glad to be free of that type of mindset, but it didn't happen overnight. And I want to say this to the Myth Vision people who watch and who wonder. If you didn't know already, I'm looking for natural explanations. Superstitions just don't cut it for me anymore. I used to just go off faith or just believe in what was handed down to me. And then I challenged that belief and moved to a different belief. Yeah, even within Christianity.
From a certain type or brand of Christianity to another brand of Christianity, ended up in a Calvinist Presbyterian Christianity. And then I studied eschatology and realized, hold on, the whole church has it wrong.
Yes, that's the leap. I can already hear Orthodox Christians, any other form of Christian saying, well, you didn't go to the right one. They could just dismiss me, right? And they do. Many do, by the way, just in case you're wondering online. They just dismiss me because I didn't go down the Orthodox route or the Catholic route or this route. And it's like, that's unfortunate because I cut through the fluff. I didn't need to go through 18 other scientific experiments with Jesus under your particular dogmas. I realized that we're dealing with a first century apocalyptic expectation in many regards, and that failed. Once you get to critical scholarship, you realize that, like, oh my God, it failed. Do I need to then go, become a Orthodox Christian to get your approval? No. But I just figured I'd make that comment.
Be condescending. That sounds pretty arrogant to say that whole churches got it wrong. But just like the Millerite movement that was going on in the 1840s, predicting the end, it didn't end. The movement continued. The end didn't happen. But I'm not alone in this. Critical scholars have recognized this. I never would have accepted or even listened to them if it weren't for challenging my own beliefs. I went to full preterism towards the end of my Christianity to try and save the Savior. I realized that if Jesus said, soon these things will happen, some of you standing here won't even taste death according to the Gospels. And Paul, those of us who are alive and remain at his coming, talking about himself and the Thessalonians, because they were freaking out. Some of the Thessalonians were dying. Don't be afraid. Some of them are asleep. Those who are asleep in Christ will rise first. Don't worry. They're going to be rising first, but those of us who remain are alive, at his coming. You get the gist. So they thought it was supposed to happen back then. We're 2,000 years removed from that moment. But we have modern examples are somewhat contemporaneous compared to 2,000 years, and looking at other cults and how they've done things. Heaven's Gate cult was willing to commit suicide, or the Jonestown, suicide that happened with cyanide in the Kool-Aid. But other cults, like the Millerites that predicted the end would happen, and it didn't happen. Is that what happened to early Christianity? Evidence started pointing in that direction to me and told me, 2 Peter 3, there'll be mockers and scoffers in the last day about the coming of the Lord. Things have been remaining the same. Nothing's changed since our fathers fell asleep. 2 Peter 3. Don't worry, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. I found myself realizing, oh my goodness, the reason the church kept going is because what was expected never happened. And that is when things started hitting. But before they started hitting me critically, I had to make God bigger. And I'm glad I did, because my deconversion wasn't, I'm a believer, I'm not a believer. No, parallels to pagan religions also helped me recognize, is Jesus really the way, the only way to God? Why are there other virgin births in history, other deaths and apotheosis, resurrections, if you will, other miracle workers? Why are those things kind of common amongst deities? Yet Jesus is the only true one. He's the only real one. I had a hard time wrapping my head around that. So because there were common tropes in antiquity from other gods and other cultures, I finally made God bigger. I couldn't have him be the narrow way, the only path is small, few find the way thereof. I recognized God was bigger in my view, and I said, okay, he's showing and revealing himself like the 6 wise men and the elephant. If you don't know the 6 wise men of Hindustan,
I think I already
I
covered
encourage
that.
you to look that up. Google it. 6 wise men of Hindustan, to learning much inclined. They all went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each of them might satisfy their minds, something like that. And then they all give a description of the elephant, though they're all blind, and they're all arguing back and forth at the end of this poem, and every one of them was partly in the right, but all were in the wrong. And that's how theology goes. They go on and on about what each other mean about an elephant not one of them has seen. And I had never seen that elephant, but I made it bigger. And it was like, if you've ever seen those little toys that go together, they're little balls, and then you could stretch them and they become these expandable, huge, I don't know what they're called, toys that are kind of like Lego type balls that you can expand and contract, and they look like a orbit, like a global spherical ball. But when you open them, all this free space in the middle is there. There's not much mass to it. It seems like more mass when it's a small, very narrow ball. But when I expanded God, yeah, he was bigger. He was so big, he was vague. He lost that mass. He lost that powerful, very individual. I could see why monotheism seems attractive to some folks. Oh, I have the special one. But this bigger was way more comfortable to me. It made more sense to me as well. So I went with the bigger, because I couldn't accept the religion and God that I had been worshiping since I was a child. And at this point, I'm trying to rectify my problem with what I found in Christianity with the rest of these world religions that I'm now exploring, just to learn. Not that I was going to go to a Hindu temple or I was going to go to a mosque, but I wanted to learn why they believed like they did and what their stories said. And as I did that a little, I haven't done that exhaustively at all by any means, I started to realize, oh snap, everybody's right and everybody's wrong. It's just the way the cookie crumbles with religions. When God became expanded and much bigger, it almost became a natural thing. Like God is the laws of nature, energy, whatever. It got so vague that it almost blended in with the natural world around us. All I did was jump to this kind of consciousness position, kind of like some people who argue non-duality, the way I've heard it and understood it. And I felt like the reason I went there is I needed a cushion. I needed a comfort, that there was meaning and purpose, and that I didn't create it myself. That was some destiny, something bigger, larger, made me feel good. Like a child feels like they have purpose when their mother and father are there encouraging them and giving them that comfort that they know they're there. Kind of like, and this is going to sound funny, but my dog, for example, and dogs are known for this, they won't defecate unless they're close to a master or someone because they feel comfortable. They're at their weakest point when they are using the restroom.
Most vulnerable.
And so I felt comfortable thinking something was there without any evidence that there was. It took a long time to finally go, okay, a lot of emotional peeling away the onion to allow myself to even question and ask, is there really a God? Not with the doubt in my head as a Christian or the doubts I had throughout my life, but seriously willing to explore that option. Could the natural world explain what there is and all there is to know? Now, I'm not saying there are things we don't know. There's things that we'll probably never know. And that's what I love about science now. But I wondered if there were natural explanations for all these things that the spiritual or the religious world is trying to account for. Why do we assume agency? How does the mind operate? Are we just built superstitious, if you will, machines? Like, are we built naturally this way? Is that an evolutionary component to believe in things we don't see and assume agency? The scientists I've talked to say yes. And I'm exploring this question deeper and more. So I wanted to make this confession, if you didn't know. And I say it because I don't want this to affect you if you're a believer or not. I love you all the same. But I want you to hear it from my lips because most of the world believes in things. And they believe in some philosophy, some religion, something. And usually the ones who are at odds are the ones who don't believe in those things, have a different outlook. I think we should all be open and have that freedom of speech to be able to say where we're at in life, in our journey, and you should be totally fine with that. You may not agree with my conclusions, but what I'm trying to do, I think, is an honest and open journey that you guys have explored. And you can Google my name on YouTube or YouTube my name and you'll find me. I was a Calvinist with a beard. I was super into the Bible. I know that the Calvinists out there and other Christians who are once saved, always saved, so to speak, you were never really one of us. You were never really saved. To be even able to say what you say. And
you can see my little scruffy, wild ass beard on the left there.
Act like you do. I get it. I was in that world. Totally understand. But proud to say, I'm no longer in that world, and I'm exploring a whole nother world that I never knew was there. And I'm very thankful that I have come to this conclusion and started to realize, let me see if the natural world and things that I can empirically test make sense and can actually better account the evidence than the superstitions and, as some people call fluff, the woo-woo, the superstitions, so to speak, that we always have had as humans. It was our best shot in the ancient world to try and jab at things like philosophy and the origins of life, why we suffer, why are we here? But maybe we have other better explanations. And I hope you guys know we are Myth Vision.
Been doing that one for a minute, haven't I? Good to see everybody. Thanks for the compliment, Doc. And a couple trolls popped in. I had to knock one of them out. I'm going to get to your super chats here, but again, I want to sum up here, and then I take any questions, any comments. Feel free to super chat. Of course, we can use the help here with Myth Vision. I want to hang out with you guys more. I want to have your stories shown to the world, your experiences, so that people understand we're not alone, because there are a lot of people out there, believe it or not. There's a lot of work being done, but there are a lot of people out there still who may not relate to what I said. They didn't have addiction issues or an alcoholic father, but they might relate to your story. And that's why I put out the fillers, and I'm going to continue to put out the fillers. And so if you ever find it in your heart or the courage, and you have a story that has you deconvert, I've had some people write conversion stories to me. I kid you not. I'm like, hey, can you help me ladies and gentlemen, if you want to tell your story about how you left the high control religion, not how you like converted to a high control religion that's different from the high control religion you're in. I'm looking for people who've left that religion and have found freedom. They may not be atheist. They may be agnostics. They may be atheists. They may be some form of theist, more philosophically. They're no longer churchgoers or whatever. I'm cool with that kind of stuff. But like, don't tell me you left a cult to join another cult and then think I'm interested in that kind of story, because I'm trying to get people to feel comfortable realizing they don't need to be in these high control situations that I think are harmful, and try to give people, community that do not demand a Sunday service, so to speak. I hope that makes sense. I really, really do hope that makes sense. So I mentioned full preterism in that video. That's a whole other thing I talk about all the time when we get into eschatology. That was my last position within Christianity. I was a Calvinist. I started believing that Jesus expected the end to happen soon. I started to interpret it that way. And then years, I was that for several years. I relapsed, of course, struggled with addiction. I even gave my sermon. I don't know if they took it offline because they realized I'm not a believer anymore, and they decided they were going to remove my video from YouTube. But the church in New York that had my testimony, I should have downloaded it. Derek Lambert, full preterism. It's a sermon that I gave. Full preterism testimony. I guarantee you they took it down from the internet. Yeah, I don't see it at all. And it was my name, like in the title. So someone deleted it that probably ran the YouTube channel that, I'm no longer a Christian. And so they probably were like, oh, well, he doesn't represent us anymore, so let me remove it. I really wish I had that video just to show you guys what I was saying at the time, get an idea, a feel of my theology at the time, because I was preaching to an audience of other people who were full preterists. But then I really started questioning God. And I'm still on a journey. Like, I'm all open for something proving itself. But if your God is nature, if your God is existence is God, listen, then we both believe in the same God. If you have to use the term God, then use it. I just don't need the baggage of using the term God, because there's usually baggage to that meaning that doesn't need to be carried over to explain existence, to explain reality, to explain the things that we deal with on a regular, in my view. That does not mean I have everything figured out, of course. I do not pretend to. I'm learning. I have so much I don't know. But I look at the evidence of what's in front of me based on the material data, the revelation that people have given. None of the gods that are described in the holy books for me fit. None of them make sense. They all have contradictions. There are inconsistencies. And to watch the gymnastics that we Christians have done to a text that did not mean what we say it means to try and protect that God, tells me more about it's a fun observation. It's a fun study. But I'm not going to play games anymore, right? That's what myth vision is all about. We're gonna look at myth. We're going to look at myth in the definition of myth being lies, but we're also going to look at myth as in ancient stories that are fictive, that are sacred, origin stories, you name it, and legend, folklore, you name it, all that stuff. History. I'm even broadening out. I mean, like, now I'm actually interviewing historians, and I'm at peace today. Like, look, I had a hiccup a few months ago. I did a video of anxiety and panic attack. I got diagnosed by the doctors with anxiety, panic disorder, something like that. I had a severe anxiety attack because my brother was coming off drugs. I have a son who's struggling with some like depression. I have an overwhelming bills, everything, right? We all have struggles, right? And apart from that issue, which is real world stuff, my life has been at peace. I really feel at peace. Apart from real world issues that we all are going to have, I have not had any existential crises. I mean, sure, once in a while I might go at night when I feel bad or something and I think about death, and I'll be like, I really do wish there's something after this. That'd be really cool. I wish, but I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to like just right now. I'm not, at least. I mean, maybe when I'm old and I'm like, hey, it's coming. All right, let me say some foxhole prayers. I mean, but I don't see myself doing that. I just don't know what, if there is something out there, I very much doubt it gives a shit about what I believe. There it is. Okay. I'm going to put it that way. I very much doubt it cares about what I believe. And I did an interview with Elaine Pagels not long ago, and she talks about the Gnostic Gospels, right? Which they have their own form of superstition that's in there. But she says it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what you believe. It's not about faith. It's about gnosis. And she defined it a certain way that she's like, anyone, even a non-believer, can have. And I'm like, what? So it's just interesting to hear someone like Elaine Pagels say that. I love her. She's such a sweetheart. Anyway, look, thank you for staying this long. I hope I covered, there's no way I'm going to be able to cover everything. There is so much to your life, right? It's like, to cover everything, I'd have to put on the tape recorder and play the movie. And there's no way to do that. But there is a lot more, I'm sure, I'm not remembering off the top of my head as I'm telling you the story. And I want to get to your questions, your comments, and the super chats that were so kind in supporting what we do here. So back up to where I left off. Solera Knight. Again, Solera, thank you so much, my friend, for the super chat. It means the world to me to see you in the chat here helping out. The flood was a mega asteroid impact tsunami because the waters receded. Genesis 8:3, science agrees. Younger Dryas impact theory. I've heard so many people have different views of this. And there are different times that certain floods took place. And the question is this really based off the Younger Dryas? Who knows? There might be a memory that goes back there. I'm not going to say it isn't. Obviously, even the Younger Dryas impact theory is contested amongst scientists. And I don't know what the consensus is on that position. That is the idea that an asteroid impacted, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, let me get my facts here right. Let me ask this here real quick. Bear with me. Is the when, let's just say when was the Younger Dryas? I believe we're talking 12, 13,000 years ago, right? Yeah. So this is the melting of the ice age kind of impact that there's some hypothesis say some radical impact from an asteroid. It may have been the sun's radiation. Other people have different views, is all I'm saying. I don't know what the answer is. There may be a memory that goes back, but it's not global. I know that, and seems to be indicated that it was global pertaining to the biblical account. I understand that a lot of people want to act like it's local. The original floods that are being described, like Mesopotamia, they may actually be depicting something local that evolves into something larger, but it does seem to be like the mountains are covered with water, right? Not like the valleys or the normal land. We're talking the mountain peaks are covered with water. There is no dry land. And, I think that that's kind of telling when a lot of people try to make it local to make it work with science versus just an ancient story. It's an ancient flood myth that humanity was wiped out. And if you go to the earlier version, there were too many humans. They were noisy. And not only were they noisy, there's also a scholar, a Sumeriologist, who argues that the reason that there was so much noise and so many humans is that death had not entered the world yet, which matches in the biblical context. So even in the earlier Sumerian mythology, not all of them probably agree, not all Assyriologists would agree, but this scholar thinks that the reason there's so many humans and they're so noisy is they can't die. So you have to kill them in order for them to die. And how do you do that? You send a flood. You wipe them out intentionally. And of course, one of them survives and gets granted immortality. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing. So is there a memory behind these myths? Maybe. I know that floods happen all the time in local regions, and there may have been massive ones, obviously, going far enough back. But even the Younger Dryas impact, from my understanding, the impact, maybe certain local regions had tsunamis, okay? But like water rising, it took hundreds of years for like the elevation of the water across the globe to take place. That is a different story. So did the story travel from a region that survived a tsunami or something, and then it found its way, traveled into Mesopotamia and eventually the Bible? Maybe. I don't know the answer to that question. And many scholars debate this very thing. It's a good question, Soler. It really is. I really appreciate the support. One Love Above 22. Thank you for the super chat. I'm going through the same shit, man. Things are getting better. You don't know me, but I love you, brother. Oh, thank you, One Love. Appreciate that. I think you gave this to me around the time I was going through the emotional part of my story, where I was explaining how I was like just in the most desperate, low spot of my life with addiction and heroin. And I can tell you this, I've had enemies in my life. I have enemies in my life today, and we all do. I do not wish this shit on my worst enemy. I'd rather forgive my worst enemy than like literally have them go through what I went through with addiction. That's how bad addiction is. I don't wish any human goes through that. That's also another reason why, and I didn't get into this in my deconstruction story, my deconversion, but the doctrine of hell. I went to a 12-step meeting one time, and this guy looked at me and he says, religious people are religious because they don't want to go to hell. I mean, this is pretty basic. Doesn't cover everything. It's not nuanced. But he says, religious people are religious because they don't want to go to hell. And he says, spiritual people are spiritual because they've been to hell and they don't want to go back, right? Now, he's just trying to say, like, he still believes in a higher power, but he's not religious at all. And I agree with the sentiment. For me, as someone who has scars on his mind and even his body through all the things that I've been through and the trauma that I've gone through, to say, I've been through hell and I don't want anyone to go through hell. And then to take that hell and to try and multiply it on a scale that is unimaginably worse than what I went through, and to say that my loving God wants you saved, but he's going to send you to this place that is beyond anything you've ever imagined, Derek. And you're going to tell me that's a loving God? And he made this place. He created all things. He made a place called hell. He puts you in a garden, right? You're humankind. He can't just forgive your humankind and not have that place. Like, it doesn't make sense. And it also, it told me that there's no way that that's logically a conclusion you can have, that this God is love. I could not buy it anymore. It's impossible to square that for me. And that problem, even the Christians had a problem with that. Origen had a problem with that. And I think he's one of the brightest early church fathers. Origen was one of the gangsters in the early church. I recommend people read Origen. Even the non-believers, really wrap your head around what he's doing. He sees there's problems in the Gospels. He's trying to metaphorize a lot, but he also was a universalist ultimately, in the sense that everyone ends up going to God. And I think he even, and I could be wrong about this, I think he even thought Satan himself would be forgiven one day. Now that's a straw too far for most Christians. The devil, they conflate Satan and the devil. The devil will be forgiven? Well, if my God was love, looking back at it, yeah, even the most epitome of evil itself will have to surrender to love. That would be my theology. Hate to break it to you, but that God that you worship is not all loving. Get rid of the all and just say he loves somewhat. You know what I mean? But I don't know how much love you can have if you built a place of dungeon and torture for people. Just why does that place have to exist? You know, it's ridiculous. I remember justifying why evil existed as a Calvinist too. And the reason we would explain in Romans 9 was to say, oh, well, you like, imagine you stole $1,000 from me, though I set it up so that you would steal $1,000 from me. And then I turn around and I have two choices. I can charge you with the law and be justice and holy and make you punished for the 1,000 you stole, and you get to do crime. By the way, it still doesn't match eternal conscious torment or any form of such things, which is ridiculous. For what? Petty sins on earth compared to eternality? That's ridiculous. But either way, I can punish you, or I can forgive you. I can show you mercy. Here's the reason I would justify in my mind. As a Calvinist who believes God's in control of everything, I believed God made some people for heaven and some for hell. I literally got to the place where I was like, yeah, he predestined some for heaven and some for hell. And I'd read Romans 9 through that lens. But then to go a step further, I would say the only way you could ever know about God's mercy is if you did him wrong. So if God has an attribute of mercy and he wants to reveal that to humans, the only way you will ever know what mercy is if you've done him wrong so that he can show you mercy. Which, I mean, all of this is mental masturbation to make sense for God, to be honest with you. I'm just being honest. But that is what I would do. All right. Beachcomber73, thanks so much for the super chat and for being a member of Myth Vision. I believe you had crippling anxiety as a teenager, and drugs and your faith were your crutches. I agree. They were never enough. Stop trying to meet others' expectations. You are here to seek truths. Absolutely. I mean, look, I think we're all always still, doing things and don't realize and seeking people's expectations or whatever. But yeah, I think ultimately the way I'm going to look at that is I would look at it as trying to meet God's expectations or something like that. And I'm a human. I'm going to stay in my lane, and humans do what humans do. We can always improve, but I'm not going to pretend that this body that I'm born into is evil and bad and not something that I should be comfortable with. And that was the Christianity I did have. And most Christians, I think, are comfortable in their skin, and they don't even realize the doctrines in their Bible that emphasize the hatred of the flesh, that tell you to die to the flesh daily, that tell you to take up the cross, to forsake this life. Jesus said, I took this shit serious. When he says, take up your cross and follow me, love not the world, and he talks about these ideas of like, if you try to hold on to this life, you're going to lose it in the one to come. But if you forsake this life and follow me and forsake the material goods of the world, like the rich man, he told, sell everything and come and follow me kind of stuff. Like, that's a hard teaching. And I really wanted to try to follow him on these things. And that's harmful. I think that's ridiculous. And there's been many people who've done it in history that have gone further than me. And they're known as saints and monks and stuff and martyrs, right? They died for this stuff. No, thank you. Right. But Beachcomber, thank you so much for the super chat. Ricky Johnson in the house with a super. Ricky's coming on soon. We're going to get his story. Thank you so much, man, for being here, for supporting the channel. It means a lot. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about your story and your journey. Means a lot to me to hear a lot of the people who've been around for a long time in the chat be able to give their strength, give their power, give their story. And I don't know what Ricky's story is yet, but we'll find out. We will. Doc Pluroma in the house. Doc, super smart, always. Thank you for the super chat and being a member of Myth Vision. Deconstruction isn't collapse, it's courage. Questioning inherited beliefs while rebuilding means taking strength, rebuilding. Sorry, let me reread that. Questioning inherited beliefs while rebuilding meaning takes strength. Doubt isn't failure, it's growth. Whatever you land on, owning your worldview is real maturity. I think it's important that I don't try to play the game just because people don't like the name atheist online. I don't know why I came to that kind of worldview here in the end. It sucks that it has a negative term because people have this idea of it. I can tell you this, I would have never called myself that. As a Christian, I couldn't even dream that I would have ever been where I'm at. It wasn't even an option. This is the most wicked place in my mind as a Christian I could ever have gone to. Like, this is the most, you cannot even get worse than this in my mind when I was a Christian 15 years ago. And yet the people in my life that know me say, Derek, it's so funny because most people in my life are Christian. They say, Derek, you're more of a Christian today than you ever were when you were a Christian. Like, meaning what they mean by that is that you're so much more calm, down to earth, balanced, mature, gentle, loving, understanding, all the things you would hear about the Spirit giving you. And I deconverted. it's wild how the fruits of the Spirit showed up, manifest they were there, but don't get me wrong, I was always like this, but they were like, you're much more since you've left. You don't have the shackles and the chains of this dogma. And it's so weird. I don't know why I'm going here. I had a dream, and I don't remember what the dream was, but I was thinking about the whole story of the Bible. If you take the story, and it's just, I think I thought this way because the recent debate that happened with Neil and Jay and worldviews, and I was, deeply entrenched in thinking critically about both what Neil said and Jay. And I thought to myself, here's a God who makes mankind in a garden to be slaves. They're not just like, hey, you mind doing the crops for me? They're laborers. They're his slaves. Adam and Eve were God's slaves in the garden, and Israel was God's slaves. They're his people. And you see this idea of slavery going all the way from the oldest, stories of the Hebrew Bible into the theology of Jesus, slavery theology. You need to be subservient. You need to be bound. I can't imagine that this does not have toxicity all the way to the roots and beyond. The same way John Knox called the Catholic Church a tree that has lost all fruit. It's a rotten tree at the roots. He thought the whole tree needed to be axed down. That's how sincere I'm looking at this through. I'm going, is this really that dark all the way through that we don't even realize how messed up the whole thing really is? And I thought about that this morning. I don't know why. I just thought about that during the super chat, but it seems dark when you think about we're inheriting the slave mindset. And then, the people who are saying, I'm not interested in the story, which I'll call shackles, you're trying to sell me. And if I don't, then the master will whip me for all eternity if I don't be obedient and follow in that path, because you claim that God is all good and it's contradictory and it doesn't make sense to me. Are you kidding me? Break those chains. I'd rather live in a delusion outside of Plato's cave than stay chained looking at the illusions on the wall. Even if I never get to the reality of reality, I'd rather exit and see the sunlight than sit there and be looking at the shadows on the wall. So even if you say, well, Derek, you're still deluded or you're still delusional. Good. Okay, cool. All right. My delusion is less harmful than yours, in my opinion. That's where I'm at. At least it's less harmful for me. So, Solera Knight in the house again, man. Thank you so much, Solera. Epic of Gilgamesh. You just dropped a bomb on me. I fell in love with the Epic of Gilgamesh in the past. I think I listened to it about 2 years ago from start to finish, right? I used to cherry pick it just to get a quote about Utnapishtim or cherry pick it this. I didn't realize, dude, just download it on Audible and listen to the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's such a good story that Joshua Bowen even got the whole tattoo of Gilgamesh, I think on his arm or his leg. I think it's on his arm. Dude, don't get me started on Gilgamesh. I mean, Solera, come on now. Like, I freaking absolutely love that epic, even though there's some horrific stuff in there. Gilgamesh, this very powerful giant king, he's being a terrible king. He's sleeping with the women before they consummate their marriage with their husbands, and he's doing all sorts of injustices. And the gods hear the cries of the people. So the gods send Enkidu. Enkidu is living amongst the animals. They're literally his companions until a hunter comes back to Gilgamesh and says, listen, I can't hunt. We're not going to eat. We can't even get, game, deer, elk, whatever might be in the woods, because this wild man Enkidu keeps breaking our traps. Next thing you know, Enkidu is hanging out with the animals, and they go back to Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh says, look, dude, there's a prostitute named Shamhat. Take her to the edge of the woods, present her to Enkidu, and let her expose her, her body parts. He will be like drawn to her, and then next thing you know, he'll go into her, and then that will fix this problem. And it did. And it says for 7 days and 6 nights, or 6 days and 7 nights. I can't remember which it is. He went into Shamhat, and then tries to go back to the animals, and the animals want nothing to do with him. His eyes are opened. He is now becoming a human. Well, Adam had animals as his helpmeet. So there's so many parallels. So don't get me started, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in Gilgamesh. I love the freaking story, man. I recommend any and every person go on Audible. If you want to read it in the book, get a book. But if you want to listen to it while you're mowing the grass or going for a walk, I highly recommend it, because you're gonna feel something from such an ancient story. You're gonna feel the tension of his own mortality and your mortality. You're gonna feel the tension of the loss of his friend in your friends, in your family. It's a hell of a story. That's what I would say. It's a hell of a story. God is an atheist. Solera, come on. That's a good one. Like, is there a God above God, right? People always ask these questions. And what was the name of the big YouTube channel back in the day that showed the scenes? Help me out. I'm coming to the chat, because there are 2 sections on StreamYard where you could see the super chats, but you could see the live chat. What's the name of that YouTube channel, where the atheist channel, and they made it where this guy dies, right? Or yeah, I think God with this guy dies, or just God ends up dying somehow, floats up to heaven, and there's a God above that God, and that God goes up, and next thing you know, there's a God above that God, and then it's like, this God did not know that God existed each time that he goes up into the next level. Is there anyone here? Anyone here? No. I'm looking to see if anyone knows. Nobody in the chat. Dark matter. Yes. There are some classic videos on Dark Matter 2525's YouTube channel. Must watch, funny thought experiments, that make you go, what if God had a God and he didn't even know it, and he's an atheist, and well, he gets sent to hell because he fudged up and didn't believe in a God above himself. And then he is even in worse punishment because he made all these other people believe he was the only God. Like, think about that one, right? I'm the only God. And the next thing you know, there's all these other gods above him. And because he sent all these other people thinking he's the only God, he gets in even more trouble, Very, very funny channel if you haven't checked it out. All right. We got, M.R. Anderson in the house. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. I rejected all developed eschatologies, studied and even received divine knowledge. There is an answer, but churches have it wrong. They are in darkness. Got kicked out of my last church. Never stopped seeking truth. God bless. Thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. I'm never going to stop ever exploring. I think that's my new thing is just constantly learning and enjoying life and trying the best I can to explore what is the truth and learn and study. I'm sorry you got kicked out of your church. It might be for the best though, right? I got kicked out of mine. I was excommunicated from mine. They claim it's for absentee, technically, even though they had just done like a 5-man elder, 5 elders sat me down in like a court-like procession, told me, shut up, don't say a word, and they wanted to correct me for my heresy of full preterism. So I get it. You're on a journey too, right? And you believe you figured out some stuff. And I hope you keep seeking as well. And thank you for the camaraderie, the respect here. And that like we have a lot in common here. And I really do appreciate that. Thank you again for the super chat too. But yeah, look, I think we're all feeling our way blindly in the dark, right? But sometimes I think if we just turn to the things we can know and use good tools with that, instead of mental masturbation about things we can never know or be certain about, that's why science is appealing to me today. I got duped. I got tricked. I feel like not that they intentionally did, but that I really was sold a something that I was trying to depend on that was not the case. And I think when you get told that, now anyone else who brings you something else and says, no, 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 I have the spiritual reality, the spiritual God, or the real truth, or the real divine nature, or whatever, all of that is so questionable for me that I'm skeptical of believing it and probably not going to believe it until I see data that presents itself that is convincing to me. And so I start with like actual reality that we experience and we can test and observe and repeat versus that. Now, that still doesn't mean we're not in some kind of video game right now. This isn't some kind of alternate reality or some like brain in a vat, right? I can't prove any of that. But I think that we need the tools and good methods to try and achieve those answers the best we can. Everything else to me is faith. Everything beyond that, experiences and all that, it's faith in some way or some form of believing in something greater through experience and whatnot. You may not want to call it faith, but you get it. You understand what I'm trying to say, I think. All right, what's up, chat? What is up, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. Further you dive into science, the more you realize there is a creator, someone said. I mean, the more I dive in, it's kind of odd question to make that statement. Like, the more scientists I talk to who dive into science, who know the science, they aren't persuaded of the creator like that. Now, you might go and find Stephen Meyer or someone who's part of the, like, what is it, the Intelligent Design Institute or whatever, and people like that. Sure, but I don't think most the scientists are theist. I think most of the scientists are atheist, and I see why they are, right? Whether they're right or wrong, that's irrelevant to the point. I see why when you're looking at the world, you see all the natural world that you're observing and saying, something made this, all the death, all the problem of evil comes up, divine hiddenness comes up, all these things, and you're telling me there needs to be a mind that made it all. And they just don't see that mind making it all. They have other ways to explain the data without trying to posit a divine being. I get that. I understand that now. I didn't think of it through this lens, and who knows where I'll be at in 10 years from now, what I might think in 10 years from now, 5 years, 2 years. I'm studying, right? I'm learning. But I think that that's just, when you hear that comment and I think, well, what are most the scientists thinking about? You know, what do most the scientists believe? You know. Anyway. Love you too. Love you too. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just, I'm just pointing out like where I'm at. So, I want to make sure that if anyone has anything else, hit me now. I'm going to wrap things up here. You got to see a lot of my life story and experience, and, not all of it, but there's a lot more there, I'm sure, that I didn't touch on. And I just wanted to share it with you. Whether you wanted to hear it or not, you didn't have to watch this video if you felt that way. But hopefully it helps someone who realizes that they're scared of the other side. They're scared of, the tradition, questioning that tradition, not believing in that tradition. For me, life got better. For me, it got way better. And it's more fun. I could explore so much without the shackles of, don't listen to that person. Oh, don't study. I can listen to anyone. Radical fundamentalists. I can listen to people who are heretical, people who are completely condemning of the Bible. I would never be able to do that before because this was my sacred holy Bible, my King James Bible, and this is my book, Like, no. Now, it's a human book written by many humans. No divine being at hand. That's where I'm at. All the evidence points that way to me. So what do you do? What do you do? Let me see here. Jim D says, BS scientist Marvel. I don't know what conversation I'm jumping in here. Marvel at profound order of the universe and are blown away by it. Yeah, there are a lot of scientists who are atheists who are blown away by it. Yeah. You hear that from Richard Dawkins all the time. He's like, I'm just blown away. It's so beautiful. I love, nature. Of course, there's also a lot of horrific stuff. If you just stay tuned long enough, Richard Dawkins will talk about the crazy stuff this earth has and the world has and the horrors and, all that as well. But yeah, a lot of scientists see that. I look at the world that way. It doesn't mean that they need to think there's a God or not, Jason says Gilgamesh, Anu. Those stories are so good because they're not telling you need to believe these things, right? There's no like apologist attached to Gilgamesh forcing Gilgamesh down your throat to believe. And it's a fun epic. It's such a good epic. I love Gilgamesh. Great story. Someone said, I was an atheist until I read the Bible. Hey, I don't know. You probably have a story, and I'm sure there's an apologist channel who might want to have you on. I have the opposite effect. The more I took serious reading and analyzing and actually trying to understand the text as far as historical method goes and all of that, it's led me further away from believing this stuff happened. And of course, that's really where the intellectuals have gone with studying the Bible. Even the Christians, if you look at the history of Christian academia, and I'm talking about Christians, these aren't atheists, Protestant Christians that have come out of the Protestant Reformation over the 400 or 500 years since then, they were the ones finding these flaws in their own text. They were the ones who started to cause their own doubts. And in fact, David Friedrich Strauss, well-known, amazing academic, highly recommend you read this, once Christian academic in the Christian movement, a couple hundred years, right? I can't remember exactly when he wrote. I believe we're talking 1800s. Let me double check when he was around. Actually, I'll do this with ChatGPT because it's easier instead of trying to get his name correct perfectly. Let me see. When did David Friedrich Strauss write his books?
David Friedrich Strauss is best known for his work Das Leben Jesu, The Life of Jesus, which he first published in 1835.
Okay.
This book was groundbreaking.
So this was roughly right around the time that Joseph Smith and Mormonism was on the scene. So he wrote this in 1835. So think Mormonism, Joseph Smith time in American history. And he's writing literally all about Jesus and why he does not trust this as history. And he's actually against the rationalists who are trying to make sense of the miracles in a rationalist way. That's a whole nother rabbit trail. But in one of his books that I just recently got online, at the beginning of it, he says, "Are we Christians anymore?" And after reading the Bible like intensely and studying this stuff, he says, "Are we Christians anymore?" And he's like, in the, people have different definitions of what a Christian can be and what that means, but ultimately says, no, we're not Christians in any traditional sense of the word at all. He said, really interesting. So I think there's a bunch of chat debates going on. You know what I mean? Not really sure. People are arguing in the chat. Let me see. You put too much thought into the text, someone said. I'm not sure if they're talking to me or someone else. That's the problem with me when I'm like talking and then I come over to the chat. You never know if people are talking to you or talking to someone else. And yeah, look, I love y'all. I really appreciate you for being here. Stay tuned. Tomorrow I'm going live again. Let me share that with you so everybody can see what's going on, what I have on the schedule, and how you can check that out. I want to do a quick shameless plug. We've got courses with academics that if you have not got your hands on them, I really highly recommend. We don't have a single scholar on there who's not providing golden insights. Totally worth checking out. So you see I'm live here. I realize YouTube shows two different live streams because one of them is on the phone. So they have through my software, it now feeds the live through the phone and also through the YouTube side. So you can see both sides. I have live streams. I have live streams coming up. Dying and Rising Gods. We're going to be doing that tomorrow at 5 p.m. So look out for that. On Friday, the 20th, I'm going to be doing a deconstruction or deconversion story with Stacy live at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you're going to want to check that out. Let me go to my lives here so you can see more behind the scenes here. I've got more coming up. My buddy DJ is going to talk about how he lost the battle, right? But really won in the end of the day. He fought to keep his faith. His mind wouldn't let him. I've got Planet Peterson coming on. Going to talk about his story from Christianity and how he had a science degree and a Bible. Only one of them survived. No more excuses. Justin from Deconstruction Zone will be coming on in March. We're going to be talking about the failed predictions and also the wonky solution to prophecies we find within the New Testament. I have Jacob Berman. He's going to be coming on talking about this God predating the biblical God Yahweh named Ishkur and how he thinks there's this idea of Ishkur traveling into Yahweh. Don't miss those. I mean, these are all going to be good. Hell was invented. I'll be doing that one. I'll be going over hell and the details of the myths and stories of different ones, but also the development within the Judeo-Christian tradition. Quran, not from God. The Quran's hidden sources, Gilgamesh, Alexander, all that. And that'll cover some of the stuff that I've done here before. I don't know why it's showing up twice for... Oh, no, it's not. Okay, we already covered that. So Noah's flood was stolen from Mesopotamia. Clickbaity title, of course. But ultimately, without Mesopotamian flood myths, you wouldn't have Genesis. I'm going to keep it real. I can't believe it anymore. That's our live we did today. And then I've done other lives. I'm going to be scheduling in many, many more lives. Stay tuned, subscribe, like. And when I do these live streams, please, if you have it in you, super chat to keep the lights on. It helps. If you can't afford to do that, you can't afford to take a course or any of that, we understand. Like the video, free. Comment down below after the live stream, during the live stream, free. Subscribe, free. Share it to your community or to whoever you think will listen. It's free. That's the best way to help us grow. And I hear they have a way to hype videos now too. So, there's all sorts of new things rolling out on YouTube. And as much as I've been doing YouTube for a while, I'm even like, that's new. I don't know how to do some of this stuff. So anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I really wish I had more time to hang out and talk. I do want to have panel discussions at some point too, where we can hang out here and start creating an environment where there's many people on the panel. We're talking and debating and chatting. And I have some friends who are telling me, man, you should have it because they have certain communities where they do that, where you can super chat to kick people off the panel. And then they can super chat to get themselves back on. It helps the channel grow. Obviously, it helps us financially to keep doing this as a full-time thing. Because without that, you don't have a way to pay your bills. That's just real. Anyone who questions anyone who's making an income to try and do something full-time, is just not paying attention, But I want to do some new things and hang out with you because I think a lot of the insights I've learned over the years come from a lot of the audience members. You in the comment sections, you in the live chat. I'll look and learn and listen and go, man, they got a point. That's interesting. And it's not just the academics. Even when I talk to the most elite bright minds, they come on and they go, it's a lot of the people in your audience that made me think about these things and think differently about them, or even I didn't know about these things till they brought it up. So thank you to you for being here. I love you guys. Love everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really hope you have a wonderful day and enjoyed my story. Until next time, we are Myth Vision. Peace.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.